Welcome back to Scotty's Hobbies. Today, August 21st, was day 3 of 4 of the oral hearings of the EPA proposed rule for reconsideration of the 2009 endangerment finding and greenhouse gas vehicle standards. Today was a little bit different than the other days, and I'm going to go over that in this video. And also, when we're all done talking, you will be able to watch the whole, not the whole hearing. I'll probably upload maybe 2 hours of hearings. I'm not sure. Before we go too far, please hit that like button, subscribe, check out the video library for a ton of automotive helpful DIY videos and possible emissions deregulations videos. Now, today, there was about 230 more verbal statements on if people were in opposition or for this proposed rule passing. And what is different about today compared to the other days? There was actually a few people that were in favor of this proposal actually passing or becoming a rule to rescind the rules that we have. Now, in the description below, I will put the minute marks for where these will be in the video, but let me go over it real fast, get it in my notes. So, day 3 is today. Jim Mullem of the Clean Freight Coalition. He was on panel 13 of today's testimonies. He mentioned what he was in favor of and why, and he is a part of obviously the transportation industry or the trucking industry. Directly after him was Lewie Pough, also in panel 13. He was speaking representing the Independent Drivers Association. Go check those out. And again, in the description below, there will be a minute mark so you can go directly to that portion of the video. Also, nope, actually that's something else. I have to delete a kid's face out of that one. Jennifer Lewis, MEMA, M-E-M-A, the Vehicle Supplier Association. So they supply parts to OEM and aftermarket manufacturers, or they're manufacturers of parts that supply parts to the aftermarket and to OEMs for new vehicles. She was in panel 19, and I will also put a minute mark for you to go see what her testimony was in regards to this proposal. Now, what do you guys think is going to happen from all this? Do you want this proposal to go through and become a new rule and rescind the greenhouse gas standards? Or do you want the greenhouse gas standards to stay the way they are? Comment below, let me know what you think. And while you're watching, don't forget, when we get all the way through it, like, subscribe, share. Let's get into these testimonies.
All right, we're moving on to panel 9. And just started to display panel 10. Again, when you see your name, you're going to start to receive a prompt from us to promote to panelist. Please accept that prompt so that you can move over as a panelist to be able to mute and unmute and turn your video on and off if you choose. Please keep yourself muted and your video off until your name is called. Our next speaker is the first speaker for panel 9, Linda Ollinger.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, good, thank you. My name is Linda Ollinger. I live in Hillsborough, North Carolina. I am vehemently against the EPA repealing greenhouse gas emission standards for light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles and engines. I also oppose the EPA rescinding the administrator's prior findings in 2009, which stated that greenhouse gas emissions from new motor vehicles and engines contribute to air pollution. I believe that GHG emissions endanger public health and welfare by contributing to global warming and climate change, which most reasonable people would agree is detrimental to life on this earth. I do not believe the EPA unreasonably analyzed the scientific record and would like to know how you think they did. I would also like to know exactly what developments have cast significant doubts in your minds about the reliability of the findings. I am absolutely opposed to the EPA repealing all greenhouse gas emission standards, and personally would like to know how you could possibly come to the conclusion that their repeal would not risk greater harms to public health and welfare than already exist. The 2009 greenhouse gas endangerment finding is a necessary prerequisite for regulating emissions from new motor vehicles and engines. Without this finding, the EPA lacks statutory authority under Section 202 of the groundbreaking Clean Air Act 1970 to prescribe standards for greenhouse gas emissions. It is essential that you, the Environmental Protection Agency, retain this 2009 finding and do your duty to protect your fellow citizens. As a result of these proposed changes, engine and vehicle manufacturers would no longer have any future obligations for the measurement, control, and reporting of greenhouse gas emissions for any highway engine and vehicle, including model years manufactured prior to this proposal. Even if you do retain certain regulations concerning criteria pollutants and national ambient air quality standards, we wonder, will they be next on the chopping block? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We're not seeing speaker 2 on panel 9 on Zoom, so we're going to move on to panel 9, speaker 3, Patrice Kopostansky. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to express my opinion as a climate activist against the proposed rollback of the endangerment finding that has been the cornerstone of the federal government's policy protecting the public from the adverse impact of climate change and greenhouse gases. I was a federal employee for over 30 years. I know what it means to trust the federal government and what it means to be a federal employee who works every day to deserve that trust. This includes the trust that the government will adopt policies based upon a fair and impartial analysis of scientific information. Science has led us to some incredible technological advances in economic growth, but that progress has come at a price that we are now paying. And so today we need science more than ever, not politics, to help us fight back against the adverse impact of the industrial processes that we now know are detrimental to our health and environment. I retired from the government 3 years ago for the express purpose of devoting myself full-time to combating the myriad problems that exist in this country, foremost among them climate change. I joined a climate organization, Third Act. I have attended rallies and sit-ins and blocked entrances to banks that support the fossil fuel industry, and I have gotten arrested for those activities. I have put solar panels on my house. Not only do I save money, but more importantly, I have reduced my carbon footprint on this earth. I'm lucky enough to live in a geographic area that has been relatively unscathed by what used to be once-in-a-lifetime hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, and fires that have devastated thousands of communities and impacted millions of people in this country, events clearly exacerbated by climate change. Further, I'm lucky enough not to have fossil fuel-based power plants in my backyard because those have been built on the backs of Black and brown people, economically disadvantaged people, people who the fossil fuel industry cares nothing about. Nonetheless, I continue to fight the scourge of climate change on behalf of my neighbors, my country, and my planet. Africans who suffer droughts, glaciers that melt at alarming rates. I have seen both. Ironically, soon the problem may be at my doorstep because of the proposed Chesterfield, Virginia methane gas plant. None of us is immune from this problem. We can't put our heads in the sand. To pretend that the danger doesn't exist or that we can ignore it is to betray the American people. I ask you to be better than that. I ask you to protect me, my kids, my neighbors, my planet.
Vehicle
Recording
owners
in progress.
in Central Virginia. As a resident of Chesterfield County, Virginia, I opposed EPA's proposed revocation of the endangerment fine that has enabled it to regulate carbon emissions under the Clean Air Act. I have a chronic health condition called dermatomyositis that primarily affects my muscles and skin. When it's really hot outside, my body doesn't last very long before I have to go inside. If the EPA ignores years of well-researched, definitive scientific findings that link carbon emissions with climate change and warmer temperatures, people like me will suffer. As the lead organizer of Drive Electric RVA, I oppose the EPA's proposed revocation of carbon emission standards for new motor vehicles. I can attest to the fact that electric vehicles can and do meaningfully address global climate change concerns without potentially causing greater harm to public health and welfare. When compared to cars fueled by gasoline, electric vehicles produce fewer carbon emissions due to their efficiency and lack of pollution from the tailpipe. Any emissions caused by the production of the battery are more than made up for in 5 years of driving. And when the battery is no longer useful for powering a car, it can be reused to power other things and recycled for their valuable components. Fossil fuels can't do any of that. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Hillary Tiefer.
I'm not sure how, okay, start my video. Okay, here we go, here I am. Okay, I am Hillary Tiefer, by the way, a PhD in English, but I also focus on ethics. I'm here in hot Portland, Oregon, which is going to have 5 days and 100 degrees coming up. It never used to have an environment like that. I think back to the days of the tobacco industry really not wanting any regulations about cigarettes because their industry wanted to keep going and be profitable and rejected science and facts, saying that there was no relationship between infants with cancer and lung cancer and emphysema and other illnesses because it was to their benefit to keep their industry going. I do wonder, however, if any one of them ever did have emphysema or cancer and may change their mind. And I do wonder now about our present Environmental Protection Agency. I know a lot of people here are talking about the scientific facts, and there are enormous facts that brought about the changes in Supreme Court decision in 2007 admitting that the 6 greenhouse gases, the GHGs, were very dangerous to our environment and to people. And we know that there are these facts. But I am concerned about whether the facts are really the issue here. We have to look at the facts, and instead of the benefits to the gas and fossil fuel industry. Because one of these days, one of these people who truly wants to get rid of these standards and scoff at it and keep the profits up may actually go outside and see a flood, and maybe one of their loved ones will be drowning in that flood. Maybe it'll take something like that, but this is a matter of ethics. They know the facts. They know the science. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, our next speaker in panel 9, speaker 5 is not on Zoom currently, so we're going to move on to panel 9, speaker 6, Fred Cannon.
Hello, Administrator Zeldin and EPA panel. My name is Fred Cannon, a professor emeritus at the Pennsylvania State University in Environmental Engineering. I affiliate with the Evangelical Environmental Network. I've had more NSF goalie projects than anyone else that aim at helping industries and water purveyors cut down pollution while saving money. I'm a moderate politically. In 50 years, the world will run out of oil and natural gas at our current rates of use. The good news is that will abruptly stop CO2 and methane emissions into our atmosphere. But the bad news is that we must grow other energy sources. 50 years is a very short time. We must act now. Jesus taught us the golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. That golden rule has been the cornerstone of human peace, progress, and safety. Here today, it especially means do unto your grandchildren as you have had your grandparents do unto you. This is the golden rule of sustainability. When oil and natural gas are mined and burned, they become CO2 and have no more energy value. Also, CO2 and methane block the atmosphere's heat transfer and thus warm the planet. In high mountains, this means that winter precipitation now falls more as rain and less as snow. So in the Sierras, Rockies, and Cascades, less snowmelt is available during the spring and summer when farmers' crop need the irrigation water and towns and cities are thirsty. This means that Western farmers, towns, and cities must now mine groundwater. The question before us today is whether CO2 and methane releases are pollutants that cause endangerment. We say yes. These pollutant releases have already caused the world's temperature to rise 1 to 1.5 degrees centigrade. This has caused more extreme floods, more extreme droughts, and more extreme hurricanes. Also, in America's thirsty West, that has caused less summer snowmelt. The hardest hit are farmers, who are outvoted by town and city folks when it comes to deciding who gets the diminished source of water. Today, let us give reason to those hardest hit to hope for non-endangerment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Juliana Gariffa.
Hi, my video is not starting. Okay, here we go. Hi, my name is Juliana Gariffa, and I am a Municipal Environmental Commissioner for South Orange, New Jersey, as well as a member of the NRDC Action Fund. I'm here today to implore the EPA to keep its endangerment finding in place. Simply put, the endangerment finding is based on irrefutable scientific fact, full stop. Now, I'm sure a multitude of subject matter experts before me have cited the mountains of scientific evidence supporting the endangerment finding. So today, I want to focus on real human stories. My state's Attorney General, Matthew Platkin, was here on Tuesday speaking about the extreme weather that has hit New Jersey. He specifically mentioned that Superstorm Sandy was the worst disaster to ever hit New Jersey. Allow me to center this with some human perspective. When Superstorm Sandy hit, my friend's parents went to try to pick up their parents so the whole family could weather the storm together. They never reached their destination. Instead, the extreme winds caused a mature tree to fall on their car, gruesomely killing them. My friend and I were 19 years old at the time. She was forced to raise her 9-year-old and 11-year-old siblings while still attempting to graduate college. With climate change increasing the intensity and the frequency of severe weather events such as this, it is imperative that the EPA continue to limit climate warming pollution. If not, how many more tragic stories like this will occur? Moreover, Superstorm Sandy was not an isolated incident. According to the U.S. government's 5th National Climate Assessment, which features research from 14 different federal agencies, the Northeast has experienced the largest regional increase of extreme precipitation in the U.S., with a 60% increase in recent decades. Just last month, 2 people lost their lives in flash flooding in New Jersey. Because of this, my husband and I are struggling with whether to start a family. In the next 50 years, global warming and extreme weather events will push the climate to the absolute limits of human survivability. Knowing that, how can I, in good conscience, bring children into this world and subject them to that future? If the government wants to avert the crisis of a shrinking, aging population in the U.S., then we all have a duty to protect the future of younger generations. On that note, I echo my plea to current EPA leaders. Please keep the endangerment finding intact and continue to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your comments. All right, we're now moving on to panel 10. We're not seeing the first speaker on Zoom, so we'll move on to speaker 2 with panel 10, Susan Lamont.
I just unmuted.
Go ahead. I
Okay.
can hear you.
Hello, my name is Susan Lamont, and I'm a climate activist in Boston. For the past number of summers here, there's been little rain, record heat, and oppressive humidity. Drought has caused forest fires, previously a rare event in Massachusetts. I have no doubt that this change in our climate is caused by too much carbon in the atmosphere. The EPA rollback will only make matters worse. We need to address the climate crisis now. Otherwise, in the near future, finding water, food, and a place to live will be a challenge for every living thing on Earth, including human beings. I urge the EPA to uphold the endangerment finding. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, we're not seeing speaker 3 with panel 10 on Zoom, so we're going to move on to speaker 4. Apologies, we're not seeing speaker 4 either. We're going to move on to speaker 5, Elizabeth Marks.
Morning, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. You have 2.5 minutes.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Elizabeth Marks. I'm a licensed mental health provider. I'm a mom to 2 children, ages 9 and 12, a couple years ago, and a member of Climate Psychology Alliance. I'm asking you today to uphold the endangerment finding. I live on a quiet street in a beautiful green suburb outside Atlanta, but I haven't always been a suburban mom. I have lived and worked in dense American cities where everybody is busy making their living, and I want to paint you a picture. Imagine walking along a busy street to get to your bus stop, breathing lungful after lungful of exhaust. Now imagine it's 95 degrees, sunny and humid. Now imagine you have asthma. Now imagine you're walking with your child who has asthma. It's the EPA's role to protect us from the harm that environmental pollution causes to human life. My children's generation is expected to experience 3 times more extreme weather events than my parents' generation. We are conducting a massive experiment with their future. The time for us to take action to reduce potential harm to them is now. Climate pollutants are air pollution. These pollutants are linked to a myriad of negative health outcomes, including asthma, cardiovascular harm, adverse birth outcomes like premature birth and low birth weight, heightened risk of premature death, and adverse mental health outcomes. And as we are seeing increased weather weirding, more extreme weather, and hotter and longer summers, you can imagine how negative impacts of air pollution can interact to make outcomes even worse. As leaders of the EPA, you have a solemn responsibility to uphold the agency's mission, to protect human health and the environment. That mission must be guided by science and centered on the people most affected by pollution and climate impacts. I urge you to defend the endangerment finding. Rolling it back would not only ignore decades of scientific consensus, but strip EPA of its ability to address one of the greatest health threats of our time. Our children are counting on you. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, we have been able to locate a couple folks on panel 10. We're going to go back to Barbara Racine. Okay, Barbara, we can see you, but you still show muted. I'm going to try and help you with the prompt. Okay, Barbara, I'm going to send you a prompt one more time. Okay, Barbara, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next speaker, but we'll come back and a team member will try and help you troubleshoot. All right, our next speaker is Reverend Dr. Becca Edwards.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Reverend Dr. Becca Edwards, and I serve as the Climate Action Fellow at Texas Impact, as well as the General Board of Church and Society of the United Methodist Church. As both a scientist and a member of the clergy, I am opposed to the reconsideration of the endangerment finding. People of faith know that we are called to show the love of God to the world by loving our neighbors. Loving our neighbor means working to ensure they have safe and healthy conditions where they and their loved ones can live lives of dignity and thriving. CO2 emissions have serious and long-term effects on the climate, and those effects on climate have significant implications for public health. Climate change makes extreme heat more likely. Paired with increasing humidity, extreme heat is deadly. It inhibits the body's ability to maintain a safe internal temperature. Extreme heat causes health impacts for every system of the body and causes everything from organ damage to mental health issues. Climate projections indicate that large areas of the Earth will become uninhabitable for part of the year as a result of extreme heat driven by climate change. Some of these areas are in the United States. Extreme heat poses grave risks for outdoor workers and people who live without access to air conditioning. Given this link between climate change and extreme heat, CO2, the main driver of climate change, poses a clear and immediate danger to human health. Our faith traditions teach that each person bears the image of the divine and that each person is worthy of dignity and respect. When we fail to limit our emissions of greenhouse gases and contribute to climate change, we contribute to conditions that are unsafe, uninhabitable, and inhumane. In short, we cannot love our neighbors if we allow unchecked emission of greenhouse gases.
Thank you for your comments. All right, I'm going to go back to Barbara Racine. Hey, Barbara, I can see you. I'm going to give you a prompt to unmute. Okay, Barbara, it appears to still not be working. Let's try one more thing. I'm going to make you an attendee, and then I'm going to unmute you from that side. You won't be able to turn your camera on, but we will be able to hopefully hear your oral testimony. All right, Barbara, I'm going to give you a prompt to unmute as an attendee. Okay, Barbara, unfortunately, it still doesn't appear to be working. If you would like to put your phone number in the private chat, I can have one of my team members call you to try to assist further. All right, we're going to move on to our final speaker in panel 10, Rick Bell.
Good morning. Can you see me?
Yes, go ahead. You have 2.5 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Rick Bell. I'm from Rapid City, South Dakota. I'm a registered professional engineer, president of Sustainable Environmental Energy Engineering, and on the board of directors for Dakota Rural Action, a grassroots organization that fights to protect our environment on behalf of all South Dakotans. I'm here today to express my strong opposition to EPA's proposed rollback of the endangerment finding, which actually concluded that climate change endangers public health and welfare for both current and future generations. Here in South Dakota, we're already seeing the devastating impacts of climate change, including extreme weather and warmer temperatures. According to EPA's own literature, what climate change means for South Dakota, reference EPA 430F-16-043, our climate is changing. In the past century, most of this state has warmed about 2 degrees Fahrenheit, and in coming decades, summers are likely to become increasingly hot, which will amplify risk to human health and the decreased crop yields. It should be noted that agriculture is the #1 industry in South Dakota. EPA's proposed rollback is incredibly dangerous and harmful. I urge you to retract this rollback and keep the endangerment finding because of the critical role that it plays in addressing climate change and protecting the health and well-being of people across the country. I believe EPA's effort to attack the endangerment finding will result in climate chaos and make climate denial the official U.S. policy. By claiming climate change and pollution that it causes poses no threat to human health and the environment, this plan to rescind the endangerment finding would let polluters get rich while we pay the price with our health, our wallets, and our lives. In a nutshell, this plan is simply an attempt to strip away protection that saves lives and slashes climate pollution while giving fossil fuel companies entitlement to pollute at will. In conclusion, EPA's mission is to protect people from dangerous pollution that causes climate change and its impacts, such as extreme weather and health harms that threaten the lives of everyone, particularly the most vulnerable. So if EPA rescinds the endangerment assessment, the endangerment finding, it means that you're abandoning your mission. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your comments. All right. As a reminder, if you end up having technology issues today, you can call into the webinar. We posted the call-in number, excuse me, into the chat, which is 669-254-5252. And then you'll enter a webinar ID 161-288-6000. You can call that number to be able to provide your oral testimony by phone. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to panel 11, where our first speaker is Holly Swiglow.
Hi, thank you for providing me this opportunity to testify today. My name is Holly. I'm a college student from Ohio. I'd like to start by echoing the comments submitted by Citizens Climate Lobby and like-minded organizations. Over the past few decades, Congress has affirmed the EPA's regulation of vehicular greenhouse gas emissions. The Inflation Reduction Act considered these emissions air pollutants and increased the EPA's authority to regulate them. And the One Big Beautiful Bill Act let most of the provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act remain. Additionally, the report that this reconsideration is based on is unreviewed and written by authors outside the mainstream scientific community. Scientists and economists overwhelmingly agree that climate change is negatively impacting human health and the economy. Climate change means more kids having asthma attacks, families having their homes burned down due to forest fires, and children not being able to play outside due to smoke. I've already witnessed these events happen in the past few years to my peers and me. Ignoring climate change will ultimately cost more in the long term financially than taking steps to mitigate it. For instance, the EPA found that its 2024 motor vehicles emission standards would result in $1 trillion worth of net benefits. As a college student, the main reason I'm speaking here today is on behalf of my generation. Young people often lack a voice in processes like these. My generation will be harmed for years to come if this finding is removed. We are already watching the beautiful world we love disappear before our eyes due to climate change, while facing the rising costs and health effects that come with it. The EPA faces a choice between deregulation and protecting the American people, especially kids, who would otherwise be increasingly harmed by air pollution and economic damage. The agency has a moral responsibility to current and future generations. Please consider which side of history the EPA will be on. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. All right, our next speaker is Elizabeth Hauptmann. Again, I apologize for any mispronunciation of names.
You did it right. Thank you so much. My name is Elizabeth Hauptmann. I live in Livingston County, Michigan. I am a mom and I serve as the Michigan Field Organizer with Moms Clean Air Force, a national community of more than 1.5 million parents united to protect our children from air pollution and climate change. I'm here today not just as an advocate, but as a mother making a plea for action and for leadership. And for accountability, I strongly oppose the EPA's proposal to rescind the endangerment finding and greenhouse gas limits to tailpipe pollution for motor vehicles. The endangerment finding is critical science-based determination that greenhouse gases endanger public health and our welfare. This rule is the foundation of the EPA needs to take meaningful action to reduce the climate pollution that is fueling extreme weather, worsening air quality, and threatening the health of our families. We cannot afford to weaken or walk away from these protections. 2 summers ago, and again this year, Michigan made global headlines for having the worst air quality in the world due to long, horrifying season of Canadian wildfires. In Livingston County, our skies were choked with smoke. We were told to shelter indoors, but for a family like mine, that isn't enough. Over 153,000 children in Michigan have asthma, including my son. That day, he couldn't catch his breath. We had to rush him to urgent care. I'll never forget the fear in his eyes as he gasped for air, or the helplessness I felt knowing that I couldn't shield him from something as essential as the air that we breathe. No parent should have to feel that way. Greenhouse gas emissions are the causing global warming that is increasing the risk of intensity of wildfires like the ones impacted my son and impact millions of children in the US each year. And it's not just wildfires. In Michigan and across the country, we have record-breaking costly storms, floods, and tornadoes. Just this spring, we had knocked out many of our trees up north. Families are losing homes, roads are washing out, and children are being traumatized by the instability of a changing climate. And these are not isolated incidents. This is the new reality, and we know what's driving it. The science is clear, the consequences are here, and the time is to act now. So I ask you.
Our next speaker for panel 11, we're not seeing speaker 3 or 4 currently on Zoom. So we're going to move on to panel 11, speaker 5, Juan Roberto Madrid.
Yes, can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Juan Roberto Madrid. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I am here today in my role as the Sustainable Communities Program Advocate with Green Latinos. I have a master's degree in public health with 30 years of direct patient experience in the ER and ICU. I'm here to urge the EPA to protect the strongest possible limits on vehicle pollution. Here in Colorado, these standards provide much needed relief from the burden of diesel fumes, climate impacts, and air pollution. I'm here because I'm concerned about the rolling back the vehicle pollution standards would expose American families to significantly more air pollution from vehicle exhaust, exacerbating the risks of asthma, lung and heart disease, and cancer. Cars, trucks, and buses are leading sources of cancer-causing air pollution, which can especially be dangerous to children, elderly, and those living with lung disease. 72 million Americans live nearby major trucking routes, putting them at risk for both chronic and acute exposure to dangerous levels of air pollution. Residents in these fence line areas are often disproportionately impacted and likely to be people of color and low-income households. In fact, regardless of income levels or geographic region, people of color have consistently higher exposure to toxic airborne soot. Research has also shown that socioeconomic status is a major predictive factor for premature death from toxic airborne soot, including diesel and soot. As an ER and ICU nurse, I have seen firsthand and treated those vulnerable patients that have had exacerbations due to the poor air quality. I'm here to ask that you consider maintaining the strongest rules so that families can be protected and no others need to sustain further harms. Thank you for hearing my testimony.
Thank you for your comment. All right, our next speaker is Camila Fiebelman.
There, I can unmute my voice, just trying to unmute video. Okay, here we go. Thank you. I'm Camilla Feibelman. I'm the director of the Sierra Club's Rio Grande chapter, and I represent over 35,000 members and supporters. You've heard from scientists, students, parents, communities, so maybe I'll put it in stark terms. Earth is like a car. The windows are open. We're so lucky it's not too hot or too cold here. But eliminating the endangerment finding and associated rules and protections is like closing the windows. It's profoundly hot outside. We and our kids are strapped into the car seat in the back, and we can't get out. The EPA has proposed to leave the vehicle, to leave the windows closed, to leave us in there with no way to get out. And we all know the results of those dire consequences. But here in New Mexico, we're a community of resilience, even in the face of what climate change looks like here. Our fire season is starting earlier than ever. Generational homes are burned to the ground, and no amount of Forest Service raking of our forests will help. Flash floods on the burn scars carry our kids to their deaths. Habab windstorms that stop traffic and blow up pollution worsen allergies and asthma. And in the more mundane realm, we have a new species of mosquito that wasn't here before and now is because of a changing climate. We can't be in our backyards in Albuquerque and enjoy ourselves. So what's that resilience like here in New Mexico? We believe in our ability to use innovation to be comfortable, to be economically abundant with our solutions. As we transition here in New Mexico from coal, we've replaced it with renewables, provided workers with severance and healthcare retraining. New Mexico extracts the second most amount of oil in the entire country, but we have the best methane rules in the entire country. Our excellent building codes make our buildings comfortable and affordable. We have clean cars rules that are meant to bring us cleaner, cheaper vehicles. So for my son and my stepdaughter, I ask, why can't we have it all? Innovate and protect, stimulate our economy.
That's time. Thank you for your comments. All right, our next speaker and our final speaker for panel 11 is Thomas Fink.
Am I on?
Yes, we can hear you,
Good.
and your video is turned on.
Okay, very good. Okay,
But we are unable to see you, but we show that your video is on.
Okay, let me see if I can start the video. There we go.
We see you.
Okay, good morning. I'm Dr. Thomas Fink. I'm a member of the Camp Hill Borough Council in Pennsylvania and a state licensed psychologist. I mentioned my background in psychology because of my motivation for making the statement and for being on Borough Council comes from a place of care and a desire to support what's best for my community. So I speak as a neighbor, an elected official, and as a psychologist who has watched our community struggle with weather that feels increasingly extreme. I urge the EPA to preserve, not repeal or weaken the endangerment finding. Local governments like ours are doing everything we can. I serve on both the Public Works and Planning and Zoning committees in my borough, where we've had to deal with increased flooding in several neighborhoods due to what is now an inadequate stormwater drainage system. We recently were awarded a federal grant to fund an expensive stormwater expansion plan in one of our neighborhoods that now has recurrent flooding, but this grant has been rescinded, and we are now struggling with what we're going to do about this situation. I've had to marshal through a new ordinance to restrict sump pump dispersals into our sewer system, since large downpours now strain the capacity of our sewer system. We're trying to invest in stormwater upgrades, revise floodplain plans, improve emergency responses, and encourage cleaner transportation and energy use. But municipal budgets and local actions can't substitute for nationwide science-based standards. The endangerment finding gives the EPA the legal and scientific basis to set emissions limits and national safeguards that reduce the pollution driving these changes. Repealing the funding would strip the agency of tools crucial for coordinated progress and leave towns like Campbell to shoulder risks alone. I ask the administrators and the decision makers here to keep the endangerment finding intact. And thank you for your attention, and thank you for your efforts to protect the health and safety of communities large and small.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, before we move on to panel 12, I'm going to go back to Barbara Racine. Barbara, are you there?
Hi.
Okay, third time's a charm. Go ahead, you have 2.5 minutes.
97% of climate scientists agree that human activities, especially burning of fossil fuels, are causing global warming. Temperatures on the surface of the ocean are going up at alarming rates. Ice sheets are melting, sea levels are rising. Catastrophic weather events are more frequent. Since 1980, flooding has quadrupled, and there has been a 50-fold increase in dangerous heat waves. At this point, repealing the endangerment finding on scientific grounds is impossible. Evidence since 2009 that climate change threatens public welfare is overwhelming. Rising temperatures are injurious to human health. Each increase of 1/10 of a degree Celsius moves around 100 million people into unprecedented heat exposure. In the US, extreme heat kills more people than any other disaster. Pollution contributes to a range of health conditions, especially heart and lung disease. Coal plants and gasoline-fueled vehicles are the greatest source of this air pollution. The respiratory illnesses this causes are estimated to kill over 8 million people per year worldwide. 3 billion people are expected to be living in water-scarce regions by 2050. Global warming increases the prevalence of Lyme disease and other vector-borne diseases. It's obvious that greenhouse gas emissions harm people. I feel we have a moral obligation to our children, grandchildren, and future generations to do what we can to try to leave them a livable world. And since America is the greatest cumulative emitter of greenhouse gases, we bear more responsibility to clean up our greenhouse gas emissions. Therefore, the endangerment clause should be retained. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. All right, we're now moving on to panel 12. We don't see our first speaker on the Zoom platform, so we'll start with speaker number 2, Julia Nikla.
Hi, my name is Julia Nutley. I'm from Pennsylvania. I care deeply about our planet, our people, and most importantly, our children. I urge the EPA to not rescind the endangerment finding and instead to keep it intact. The endangerment finding is crucial in our efforts to reduce the impacts of the climate crisis. I've seen these impacts firsthand when Hurricane Ida flooded my community and sadly destroyed homes. The local fire department had to cut through the siding of one home to rescue the person inside. That home was washed away hours later. The climate crisis is here today and is all around us. Just this year, the LA wildfires caused tremendous damage, estimated to cost over $95 billion. Tragic Texas flooding took over 100 lives. No one is safe, as evidenced by Hurricane Helene flooding an area that was thought to be least affected by climate change. We all bear the cost of these disasters because our tax dollars rightfully go to those harmed, Additionally, our insurance rates are rising to compensate for all the payouts. These disasters cost us dearly, not only in dollars, but also in lives. The World Court ruled that countries are legally obligated to curb greenhouse gases to reduce the effects of the climate crisis. While the world moves forward, this proposal pulls us backwards. In the future, we may not even be able to export our goods because of the carbon burden they bear. This EPA repeal of vehicle standards claims they cause excessive costs. However, over their lifetime, electric vehicles now cost less than gas cars. The Chinese company BYD already sells electric vehicles that cost less than gas cars, including one model that costs less than $10,000. China will outcompete us when it comes to electric vehicles and renewable energy unless we do all we can to advance these technologies. The EPA's job is to protect us from environmental harm. The climate crisis is the biggest environmental threat there is. The world knows it and will pass us by. EPA, do your job, stop this madness, and keep the endangerment finding. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your comments. All right, our next speaker is Sarah Fox.
All right, good morning.
Good morning, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Sarah Fox. I'm an elected city councilor of America's Vancouver and a U.S. Army veteran. Mitigating the effects of a changing climate are foremost of importance to the Vancouver City Council. In 2021, Washington experienced 10 days over 100 degrees and the hottest day on record at 120. This heat event killed 126 Washington residents. Major wildfires in the summer of 2020 and 2022 landed Vancouver, Washington on the top of the list as having among the worst air quality in the world. Leaders in Vancouver take our role seriously, and we have invested in climate mitigation actions at the level of $5.7 million in 2023 and have increased spending sixfold since then as climate actions are integrated throughout our organization. I was born in 1973 before the first motor vehicle regulations were passed in 1975. I was born and raised in Vancouver, 1 mile from the Columbia River and within 300 feet of the I-5 that runs north to south from Canada to Mexico. There are 143,000 vehicles in this corridor each day. In Washington State, vehicle emissions are our greatest source of greenhouse gas emissions, and Vancouver has plans to reduce those emissions. However, we cannot make the needed progress without federal partnership. My parents still live in the house that I was born and raised in. My mother is 77 and my father is 82. They've lived in that home for over 50 years. The CDC and many other reputable studies have proven that health conditions are 3 times worse when in proximity to that freeway. This is true for my parents. My mother has asthma and my father has had multiple heart attacks. Approximately 11.3 million people nationwide are like my parents and live within 900 feet from a high-volume roadway. Up until this rule change was announced, I was hopeful that our collective learning over the past 55 years would continue to improve not just the emissions from vehicles on the road, but the lives of those that live next to the roads. I am standing here today as an elected representative of a city of almost 200,000. I stand here with optimism that after days of testimony that EPA will disregard this action. EPA, put us back on track to achieve the emission reduction targets that are achievable. Don't let those ready to profit from the lack of regulation send us backward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, our next speaker is Rebecca Boulos.
Good morning. My name is Rebecca Boulos, and I am the Executive Director of Maine Public Health Association. Our mission is to advance the health of all people and places in Maine. I'm here today in opposition to the EPA's proposal to repeal the endangerment finding and greenhouse gas standards for vehicles. Thank you for hosting this public hearing and for considering the public health perspective. There is widespread scientific consensus, and has been for decades, that burning gasoline releases greenhouse gases that worsen air quality and contribute to climate change. In the U.S., the transportation sector accounts for about 1/3 of emissions. In Maine, it's the largest source, contributing more than half of the state's total. Air pollution, including ozone and particulate matter, increase the risk for asthma and other respiratory illnesses and can aggravate symptoms for those who already have respiratory challenges. Poor air quality makes it harder for people with respiratory illness or allergies to be active outside. It also means that more youth sports games and practices are canceled or moved indoors, leading to less physical activity at a time when we have a high prevalence of sedentary time among youth and contributing to childhood obesity. Most of our air pollution in Maine is from other states, particularly during the summer when wind patterns bring in pollution from the Midwest and western parts of the country, including mercury that is generated by fossil fuel plants. It's one of the reasons why Maine has been called the tailpipe of the nation and why we need federal regulation. Maine can't regulate interstate air pollution on its own. I experienced that firsthand a couple of weeks ago while on a hike with my dad. The wildfire smoke originating elsewhere was settling in western Maine, making it harder for us to breathe and unfortunately blocked the view at the top of the mountain. At a time when we're trying to rein in the costs of housing and food, addressing the drivers of climate change should be a priority. With these proposed repeals, it seems EPA has lost sight of its mission to protect the health of Americans, the very folks who are contending with and paying for the cost of air pollution and climate change. These proposed repeals are significant. The public needs more information about what they mean for them and to have more time and space to respond. I want to end by reiterating that protecting air quality and protecting public health are nonpartisan issues. We all benefit from clean air and better health. MPHA urges EPA to protect these proposals. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker, panel 12, speaker 5, we're not seeing on the Zoom platform, so we'll move on to speaker 6, Jason Rylander.
Can you see me or hear me? Here we go. Let's see.
Yes, we can see you
There
and
we
hear
go.
you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Now let me sit. Great. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm Jason Rylander, Legal Director of the Center for Biological Diversity's Climate Law Institute. The Trump administration's effort to eliminate the endangerment finding and repeal tailpipe restrictions, along with separate efforts to revoke methane and power plant emissions rules, is scientifically, legally, and morally indefensible. We've known for more than 100 years that greenhouse gases contribute to climate change and harm the environment, public health, and welfare. The Clean Air Act's definition of air pollutants unambiguously includes climate pollution. As the Supreme Court found in Massachusetts versus EPA, the law's clear statutory command requires EPA to make a scientific judgment as to, quote, whether greenhouse gas emissions contribute to climate change. The evidence was overwhelming in 2009, and it is indisputable now in the wake of multiple IPCC reports, the Fifth National Climate Assessment, and tens of thousands of peer-reviewed published reports demonstrating how climate change contributes to extreme weather events, heat deaths, disease and allergen impacts, and environmental and welfare effects on food production, water resources, sea level rise, and harms to wildlife and ecosystem services. Revoking the endangerment finding, despite all this evidence, would plainly be arbitrary and capricious. It will be litigated and will not stand up in court. We know what is necessary to minimize climate harms, reduce greenhouse gas emissions across all sectors, and transition away from their predominant source, fossil fuels, to a clean energy economy. That is the task of our time, and the U.S. is ceding its leadership to the rest of the world. Rather than eliminating the endangerment finding and rules addressing emissions from mobile and stationary sources, EPA should be taking a more comprehensive approach, listing CO2 and methane as pollutants under Section 108 and developing a National Ambient Air Quality Standard, or NAAQS, for GHGs. That would be the best way to tackle U.S. contributions to global emissions from diverse and numerous sources. EPA's proposal to repeal the endangerment finding and end climate standards for vehicles, power plants, and other industries would violate our nation's clean air laws and betray our public trust. The Center for Biological Diversity stands opposed to these efforts and will fight this every step of the way. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your comments. All right, our next speaker and final speaker for panel 12 is Christine Gilstrup.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to give comment. My name is Christine Gilstrup. I live in Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts. I am a mom and a natural health care practitioner and an active member of Mothers Out Front. I'm here today because I want my family and my community to enjoy the outdoor beauty of New England without being choked by air filled with methane gas, toxic pollution, or particulate matter in the smoke from wildfires. Repealing the EPA's endangerment finding would weaken laws that help to keep these dangerous poisons in check. 2 weeks ago, the whole Connecticut River Valley was filled with wildfire smoke. Areas like Springfield, Massachusetts, which is listed as one of the top 4 cities for asthma in the United States because of toxic air from industry, became ghost towns because no one could go outside. People up and down the valley were advised to stay indoors, especially if they had weakened respiratory systems or compromised immune systems. This has happened before, and it's happening with more frequency. Fires from Canada and the Western US send their smoke to New England via the jet stream, and it's really frightening. It feels like the end times or a war zone, and I don't want this situation to get any worse than it already is. This state has also experienced a huge increase in wildfires. Last year, Massachusetts had 200 wildfires, when normally we have about 20. Repealing the EPA's endangerment finding would exacerbate these situations. Rescinding the endangerment finding is a denial of science consensus with enormous repercussions for human health. The ties between greenhouse gas emissions and global climate change are clear and nearly unanimous among scientists. The UN rightly states, climate change is the single biggest health threat facing humanity. And we know that children and the elderly are some of society's most vulnerable populations when it comes to extreme heat, food insecurity, air pollution, and extreme weather displacement. To rescind this finding will cause untold harm to human health, and our children and the elderly will be hit hardest. It is not just irresponsible, it is an attack on the health and safety of our families. Thank you for this opportunity today. I urge you to take action to protect the people of the United States today and its future generations by not rescinding the endangerment finding.
Thank you for your comments. All right, we now move on to panel 13, where our first speaker is Phyllis Blumberg.
Hi, I'm Phyllis Blumberg, and thank you. I live in Pennsylvania. I urge the EPA not to rescind the endangerment finding. It is critical to protect my family, my communities, and future generations from the impacts of global overheating. My adult son suffered from asthma as a child, less so now, yet he never got over his anxiety about air quality alerts, and now extreme heat also makes him far more anxious. Whenever there is an air quality alert, he becomes extremely anxious and more aggressive. He has lost several jobs because of his inability to function, his anxiety, and his aggressive behavior. He is not alone. Science demonstrates the relationship between pollution and increased heat on physical and mental stress and altered brain functioning associated with anxiety, depression, suicide, anger, and even violent crime. I quote peer-reviewed scientific evidence where there's lots of it. 1, psychiatric impacts of climate change include anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, sleep disturbances, cognitive impairment, in addition to eco-stress, which is anticipatory anxiety about climate change and its consequences. Siriton, 2022. 2, heat lessens the presence of positive mood states and worsens negative mood states and decreases energy. American Psychological Association, 2023. The social and mental health consequences of extreme heat and low moving weather events are well documented, ranging from stress and depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress, and suicidal thoughts, American Psychiatric Association. If the EPA fails to tackle climate pollution by overturning the endangerment finding, it is possible that the air quality will be so bad every day that all of us will not be able to function well. There will be increased hospitalizations, suicides, violent crime, We can prevent this sad future by maintaining the endangerment finding. Fulfill your mission of protecting the health and human health and environment, EPA. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, we're not seeing panel 13 speaker 2 on Zoom, so we'll move on to panel 13 speaker 3, Jim Mullem.
Hello, my name is Jim Mullem, Executive Director of the Clean Freight Coalition, the CFC.
Jim, apologies, we're having a little hard time hearing you. Can you speak up just a little bit, please?
Yeah, how does this work, Jennifer?
That's much better, thank you.
All right, thank you. You're doing a great job, by the way. So my name is Jim Mullem, the Executive Director of the Clean Freight Coalition, the CFC. Our members are the American Trucking Associations, the American Truck Dealers, the National Tank Truck Carriers, the Truckload Carriers Association, the National Association of Truck Stop Operators, the National Motor Freight Traffic Association, the National Private Truck Council, and the Transport Project. Central to the CFC's mission is the commitment to cleaner trucks that will deliver reliable and affordable transportation of the nation's freight. Greenhouse gas phase 3 ignores and disincentivizes the use of other available clean fuels such as renewable natural gas and renewable diesel. Predicted negative effects of GHG3 have already come to fruition. GHG3 and other ZEV requirements contributed to an 8.3% year-over-year decrease in new truck sales, according to ACT Research. This means less clean trucks have entered the market, while higher-emitting trucks remained on the road. There are many obstacles which make GHG3 unattainable. I'll limit my comments to two: the charging infrastructure and the total cost of ownership of battery electric trucks. Very little progress has been made on building out the charging infrastructure necessary to electrify the nation's trucks. A Roland Berger study conducted in March 2024 concluded that to electrify the nation's medium and heavy-duty trucks, 6.38 million on-site charging stations and 176,000 en-route highway charging stations are required. The cost to fleets and truck stop operators to install these stations is $622 billion. The needed infrastructure simply will not exist to comply with GHG3. The total cost of ownership of battery electric trucks is equally grim. The cost of a new battery electric truck is $450,000, while a new diesel truck costs $200,000. Additionally, due to reduced payload and range limitations of battery electric trucks, the truckload segment of the industry would require 33% more trucks to haul the same amount of freight, according to a study by ATRI. It is simply not feasible for truckers to incur the cost of battery electric trucks and remain in business. We appreciate the opportunity to comment and stand ready to assist the EPA, and we urge the EPA to rescind Greenhouse Gas Phase 3. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, our next speaker is Lewie Pough.
Yes, good morning. My name is Lewie Pough. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. I've been in the trucking industry my entire career. Most of the time has been spent as a driver and an owner-operator. OIDA is the largest association representing small business truckers and professional drivers. For 96% of registered motor carriers in the U.S. are small business. We are undoubtedly the safest and most diverse operators on the nation's roads, and our activities impact all sectors of the American economy on a daily basis. The Trump administration has embraced a new approach of developing trucking policy that prioritizes the needs of truckers. These steps are welcome and long overdue departure of the old ways of Washington. They demonstrate that regulators are finally prioritizing the needs of millions of Americans who make their living behind the wheel. Truckers support clean air, but we need to do things that work. So we support the proposal to rescind the 2009 greenhouse gas endangerment finding and roll back nearly 20 years of overly burdensome emission regulations. These rules have put truckers out of work, hurt small business competitives, and even discouraged owner-operators from purchasing new equipment. I've owned this equipment myself and have felt some of the pains that truckers feel every day with this. Most recently, the Phase 3 heavy-duty truck rule is a blatant attempt to force consumers into purchasing electric vehicles, while drivers still remain skeptical on the cost of EVs, the mileage range, the battery weight, charging times, and even the availability. We've repeatedly warned against pushing forward in more impractical emissions timelines without addressing these concerns. In 2018, I met with EPA leadership during the early stages of the Clean Trucks Plan. At that time, I was optimistic of the agency's willingness to engage with the trucking industry, which would result in more practical and achievable environmental regulations. After a few bumps in the roads, it seems like we are getting back on track of meeting those goals that will result in much more reliable and affordable vehicles, and in turn, will give us achieve cleaner air for everyone. We know there's a lot more work to do, and we are on board to working with EPA to help small business truckers get the job done safely. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Colleen Tepen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. You have 2.5 minutes.
Okay, thanks. My name's Colleen Tepen. I am a nurse practitioner in the St. Louis County, Missouri area. And I'm testifying on behalf of just myself as a healthcare provider. I am testifying because I'm speaking today in opposition of the EPA's proposal to repeal the endangerment finding and greenhouse gas standards for vehicles. The EPA's proposal combines multiple major rollbacks into one single action with a tight time frame for public to respond. I see patients with chronic lung disease, and I come from a long line of family members that have suffered early deaths due to chronic lung disease. The St. Louis County area consistently receives an F rating on the American Lung Association's air quality ratings system. And if you repeal this finding, it will just lead to more suffering and early deaths. Also, climate change is already endangering the health of millions of people. It's harming Americans' health across every region of this country. Worsened air quality from wildfire smoke, increased risk of higher ozone pollution, stronger extreme weather events, and increased spread of disease put health and lives at risk. So again, as a healthcare provider and a parent and a family member of multiple people with chronic lung disease, I again support the proposed repeal of the endangerment finding. I'm sorry, I do not support the proposed repeal of the endangerment finding. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, our next speaker is Archbishop Zinkula.
Good morning, and my name is Archbishop Thomas Zinkula, and I serve as shepherd to nearly 190,000 Catholics in the Archdiocese of Dubuque, which is in Iowa. My purpose in these brief remarks is to convey the moral responsibility we have to protect life, care for creation, and defend the most vulnerable. Responsibilities that are jeopardized by proposed rollbacks of the endangerment finding and vehicle pollution standards. In the Catholic Church, we believe that creation is a gift entrusted to our care. Stewardship of the earth is not optional, it is a moral duty. Protecting human dignity means protecting the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the climate that sustains life. Solidarity requires us to stand with the poor and vulnerable, who are always the first and worst impacted by pollution and climate disruption. To deny climate science is to deny reality and close our eyes to the truth of God's creation. Love of neighbor demands action to prevent harm, and the harm is real. In 2024 alone, the United States experienced 27 extreme weather events causing at least 568 deaths. The past 10 years have been the hottest on record, with extreme heat doubling U.S. deaths since 1999. Children, the elderly, and pregnant women are especially at risk. Vehicle pollution remains a major source of this danger, with 72 million Americans living near major trucking routes, disproportionately harming people of color and low-income families. Here in Iowa, we have seen record floods, tornadoes, and heat waves. From river to river, our people are suffering. Strong standards save lives. They prevent billions of tons of climate pollution, reduce smog and soot, and mean fewer cases of asthma and premature deaths. Families save thousands of dollars on fuel and healthcare costs. These protections are good for people and good for God's creation. So I urge the EPA, uphold the endangerment finding and maintain strong vehicle pollution standards. We will be judged by how we protect the least among us. The call before us is clear: protect human life, defend human dignity, and safeguard our common home. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, we're not seeing the final speaker for panel 13 on Zoom, so we're going to go ahead and move on to panel 14, which is set to be our last panel before the lunch break. The next speaker at the start of panel 14 is Stacy Lee Sherwood.
Mute. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm not tech savvy. Okay.
Okay, and we can see you now.
Okay, great. All right. I'm Stacy Lee Sherwood. I'm an investigative writer with Reality Checks with Stacy Lee. EPA Chief Lee Zeldin's promises to oil and auto industries is why we're here today, not any legitimate errors he claims to have found. Big Oil spent $450 million in 2024 to sway President Trump and Republicans in Congress who hold the voting majority. They paid for benefits of deregulation as promised by those running for office and those picked to run federal agencies. So who are we fooling? We've known the dangers of CO2 for decades. Science and media are so politicized that facts don't matter anymore. So I'll state them again. Fact, CO2 is a health and safety hazard, not a passing concern. This will make air more toxic for all humans, animals, and plants. Another fact is humans need trees and clean water to absorb toxins, or we won't have any oxygen to breathe. As we choke the planet with pollution, we too are choking. So how is this justified? It's not. Fact. Scientists in the UK discovered higher levels of CO2 increased survival of viruses in the air and transmission risk. In layman terms, that means more pollution equals warmer air, warmer temperatures, and more viruses. So are we getting it now? Fact. We all know Zeldin's claim that CO2 is not, quote, air pollution is a lie. Another fact. U.S. Code 42, Section 7602, definitions, paragraph G, states the term air pollutant means air pollution agent or any combination of such agents, including any physical, chemical, biological, or radioactive substance or matter which is emitted into or otherwise enters ambient air. So CO2 is an air pollutant. The Supreme Court affirmed in 2007 Massachusetts v. EPA that CO2 qualifies as such if it endangers public health or welfare. Is EPA claiming to be smarter than the Supreme Court? In 2022, Zeldin ran for governor and he supported fracking. He voted to cut EPA's budget by $2 billion, and he supported weakening EPA standards under the Clean Air Act. Zeldin's EPA works for industry, not Americans. This proposal is anti-health, anti-American, and anti-environment. So shame on EPA. Americans deserve better, and we all know it. I don't support the EPA's reconsideration of the endangerment finding. EPA must do what's right for all Americans, not just industry that fund their campaigns. And by the way, Florida is ground zero. You should also ban paraquat, atrazine, glyphosate, and compound 1080. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Amy Johnstone.
Thank you. My name is Amy Johnstone. I'm from Northern California. I urge the EPA not to rescind the endangerment finding. It is crucial to protect our communities and future generations from the impacts of climate warming pollution. My husband and I were both born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. We've raised our 3 children here as well. A hallmark of this region is mild, year-round weather with fresh coastal breezes, ample fog. There's blue skies, bright sunshine, and endless fresh air. Or at least it was when I was a kid. My own children, sadly, have had a different story. They have had an entirely new season thrust upon their existence, wildfire season, where I used to just look at weather reports to decide if I needed to pack a sweater or a jacket. My own children got in the habit every school year of looking at the air quality reports to determine would their homecoming rally be canceled, would soccer have to be rescheduled, or would they simply have to put on an N95 mask just to walk the dog in the neighborhood. These new parts of their back to school routine cannot and should not be tolerated. We can't normalize living under the annual threat of it being too dangerous to even step outside and breathe the air. But that is exactly what you are asking us parents to do if you rescind this endangerment finding. You are asking us to knowingly put our children's lives at risk. We cannot do this, not now, not ever. We insist that you not rescind the endangerment finding. There just is no denying that our collective human behavior has changed our environment. We know that one of the most significant causes of climate change is the burning of fossil fuels. We know that these gases trap heat in the atmosphere, it warms the planet, supercharging dangerous extreme weather. We know that today's children, like my own, are expected to face 3 times more extreme weather disasters, like wildfires, than their grandparents. The EPA must honor their mission of protecting human health and the environment. There is no real choice here. Our children deserve the right to breathe clean air. You must not rescind the endangerment finding. Thank you for my time.
Hello? Can you hear me? I can't hear you, but I will.
Yes,
okay, there you
we
go.
can see and hear you. Go
there-
ahead.
Great. Hi, my name is Elijah Hutchinson, and I'm the Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice for the City of New York. The city opposes the EPA's proposed repeal of the 2009 endangerment finding and associated vehicle emission standards. The City of New York has long been a leader in climate policy, including our commitment to reducing greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050, because we recognize that reducing emissions is our best chance at lessening the impacts of a rapidly changing weather patterns that threaten life.
Apologies for the interruption, but we're going to need to have you slow down for our court reporter and captioning team.
Sorry,
Thank
New Yorkers
you.
talk fast. Should I start over?
You can just resume where you were.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But we can't do it alone. A comprehensive national effort is needed to avoid the very worst effects of a changing climate. That is why the city has consistently advocated for the EPA to regulate greenhouse gases under the Clean Air Act. In 2003, when the EPA denied the rulemaking petition to regulate greenhouse gases, we joined a coalition to challenge that denial, resulting in the landmark decision Massachusetts versus EPA. In 2009, the city submitted comments in support of the proposed endangerment finding as it was being developed and intervened to defend it from the challenges after it was established. Since then, we have continued to support strong federal regulation of greenhouse gas emissions in numerous contexts, including for vehicles. The EPA asserts that scientific and real-world developments have caused it to reconsider the reliability of the endangerment finding. This reconsideration does not directly address previous EPA real-world findings that greenhouse gases lead to higher air temperatures near the Earth's surface, alter weather patterns, and raise the temperature of oceans, or that raising global temperatures is associated with widespread changes in weather patterns. In addition to the previous rigorous analysis by the EPA, the New York City Panel on Climate Change regularly assesses the best available climate science and recognizes that climate change presents urgent, immediate, and long-term challenges for New York City. In addition to the science, New York City's real-world experience indicates that climate change is dramatically increasing risk to life, natural areas, infrastructure, and the built environment, and the economy to New York City. Because of our 520-mile coastline and low-lying coastal areas, several New York City neighborhoods in New York City are experiencing flooding on sunny days, absent any storms, as many as 63 times per year. As an urban area, we are also vulnerable to rising temperatures, and on average, more than 500 city residents die annually prematurely because of extreme heat. And in 2012, Superstorm Sandy resulted in the deaths of 44 New Yorkers. The city of New York, therefore, strongly opposes EPA's repeal of the endangerment finding and urges the agency to abandon this ill-advised and dangerous proposal.
That's time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, our next speaker is Heather Navarro.
Great, thank you. I'm Heather Navarro, and I direct the Midwest Climate Collaborative. I am here to oppose the repeal of the endangerment finding. The Midwest Climate Collaborative is a network of organizations in local government, higher education, nonprofits, and businesses across a 12-state region. And these 12 states, if a country, would be the 5th largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions on the planet. We know from voluminous scientific research that these emissions are harmful to human life, our Midwest forests, lakes, streams, and prairies, and all matter of beings who depend on them. These emissions at the heart of the endangerment finding result in increased costs for people in the Midwest, regardless of whether they live in big cities, small towns, or unincorporated parts of a county. People are facing rising healthcare costs to deal with the effects from extreme heat, relocation costs after a deadly tornado, and broken down infrastructure. People can't afford to pay the insurance on their family home because greenhouse gas emissions have turned their neighborhoods into flood zones. Even for folks who don't feel the impacts directly, they are already suffering and are going to suffer more when our workforce, our American-made products, and our local companies can't keep up with a global economy. Our industries want to be on the cutting edge of new technology. They want to sell their products in foreign markets, and they want to recruit a well-trained workforce that understands things like the mechanics of electric vehicles. The Midwest has provided the goods and services, fresh water, and natural resources that this country has used to grow for centuries. Yet many of our communities feel used up and left behind as employers have left and investors have focused on newer, flashier parts of the country. However, we still make things here. We are the home to innovative tech hubs. We are still the heart of the country where nearly every truck driver or railroad engineer has to cross to get somewhere else. Our communities have fought long and hard to keep the air and water clean, even before there was an EPA. We understand the economic value of jobs and of healthy soil and clean air. We need them all. The EPA continues to backslide on environmental protections and repeals the endangerment finding for greenhouse gas emissions. Our companies cannot compete on a global scale. Our workers cannot advance in their careers and support their families. Our children cannot breathe. The 2024 truck rule would prevent 1 billion metric tons of emissions and avoid 41,400 premature deaths by 2055. We are depending on the EPA to prioritize environmental and human health and protect our health, homes, and livelihoods from disappearing in a changing climate. For the sake of Midwest residents, families, and businesses, please do not roll back the endangerment finding. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, our next speaker is Adrienne Casalotti.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. My name is Adrienne Casalotti, and I'm from the National Association of County and City Health Officials, or NACCHO, speaking here today on behalf of the over 3,300 local public health departments that protect the health security of communities across the country. We oppose rescinding the 2009 endangerment finding and associated standards, as the proposed rollbacks would have wide-reaching negative public health impacts, including increased risk of environmental threats and higher rates of chronic and infectious diseases, leading to unnecessary suffering, increased health costs, and undue burden on the important work of local public health. Local health departments work every day to prevent disease, promote wellness, and assure the nation's health security. Local health departments have a significant responsibility to not only respond to local disasters, but to ensure the nation is prepared for, protected from, and resilient in the face of all health threats and hazards, including those resulting from extreme weather events and natural disasters. More greenhouse gases would increase the frequency and intensity of extreme weather events, droughts, and fires across the country. These events put people's lives at risk, impact local infrastructure like clean water, and lead to unnecessary death, disability, and suffering. Local health departments also focus on prevention of disease by working to limit or eliminate conditions that exacerbate them, identify cases early, and link individuals to care. Environmental exposure plays a role in the early onset of chronic diseases like asthma, which is responsible for thousands of deaths each year. Infectious diseases are also impacted as changes in the climate lead to more hospitable environments for vectors such as ticks and mosquitoes, spreading a range of ailments like Lyme disease to new parts of the country and putting additional Americans at risk. These are just two of the many conditions that would be further exacerbated by the proposed rollback. Overturning the 2009 endangerment finding would place an undue and increased burden on local public health, as they would need to respond to greater instances of extreme weather events, track and address vector-borne diseases, and provide services to community members whose chronic conditions would be worsened by air pollutants. EPA has a duty to protect the nation from greenhouse gas emissions that lead to poor health outcomes, especially for vulnerable groups such as people with existing chronic diseases, the elderly, and children, and is statutorily required to regulate greenhouse gases that endanger public health or welfare. Simply put, the proposed rollbacks would cause preventable harms to human health and make it more challenging for local health departments to protect and serve their communities. We urge you to maintain the 2009 endangerment finding and related standards. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to comment.
Thank you for your comments. All right, our next speaker is Gloria Barrera.
Good morning, and thank you for accepting my testimony as co-founder of the Society of Latinx Nurses. I strongly oppose EPA's proposed rollback of the endangerment finding. As a public health nurse, I see firsthand how environmental health is really inseparable from public health. Rolling back standards that limit pollution from cars, trucks, power plants, and other sources will cause direct harm to our families and our communities. Climate change is already a public health crisis. Black and Latino communities in particular face disproportionate burdens from polluted air, unsafe housing, and lack of access to resources needed to recover from extreme weather. Weakening protections will deepen these inequities, increase the rates of asthma, heart disease, and other chronic illnesses, and also place even more pressure on our healthcare system. The EPA's mission is to protect public health and the environment, not to serve polluters. Instead of dismantling those safeguards, we need stronger standards that accelerate the transition to clean energy, protect vulnerable populations, and advance environmental justice. I urge you to reject this reckless plan and adopt policies that put people's health, safety, and future ahead of polluters' profits. I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, our next speaker is Monica Hilding.
Yes. Can I start?
Yes, go ahead. You have 2.5 minutes.
It is hard for any sane citizen to formulate a reasonable response to what is a grossly, unreasonable, and profoundly irresponsible proposition. To lift regulations on an already underregulated automotive industry is to give free rein to those who have already and repeatedly demonstrated disregard for human life and for the environmental health of our nation. Automotive pollution is one of the driving forces behind some of the worst air quality in the nation. During the inversion, the smog in Salt Lake City, where I live, is so dense that you can barely see, and so polluted that we have higher than average asthma diagnosis among children and adults. It is beyond absurd for the EPA, for those who need reminding, that stands for Environmental Protection Agency, to abandon their primary objective and well-established scientific findings just to capitulate to the short-sighted pursuit of profit. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I yield my time.
Thank you for your comments. All right, our next speaker, which will be our final speaker before the scheduled lunch break, is Abigail Henkin-Wee.
Hi, my name is Dr. Abigail Henkin-Wee. I'm an emergency physician and board chairperson for the Virginia Clinicians for Climate Action. At her request, I am sharing my time with my 14-year-old daughter.
My name is Eliana Way. I'm about to start 9th grade. I'm here today because the world is changing around us and not for the better. Many of my classmates have asthma, and they struggle on poor air quality days. Once my friend Maya had an asthma attack. She started coughing and her fingernails turned gray. Watching Maya struggle to breathe, I was terrified. She was rushed to the hospital, and when we didn't see her the rest of the week, I thought she was dead. I can't describe how relieved I was when I saw her again on Monday. Trends in the incidence of childhood asthma worldwide have paralleled the sharp increase in carbon dioxide emissions over at least the last 3 decades. The prevalence of asthma in the United States has more than quadrupled over the last 20 years, in part due to climate-related factors. As a result, last year, more than 300 minors and 3,000 adults died due to preventable asthma attacks. Like many of my peers, I have anxiety. Being in nature helps me, but I often can't go out. My friends are hooked on social media. We know we should get off our phones and go outside, but often we can't because of poor air quality or extreme heat. Adults tell us the indoors are unhealthy, but the outdoors are unsafe. My friends and I feel that there's no way we can win. No way for us to be safe and healthy. The American Psychological Association notes that the impacts of climate change compound other factors that threaten youth mental health. The acute impacts of climate change can cause trauma and PTSD, and the longer-term impacts of climate change, such as heat, drought, and poor air quality, can increase the risk of anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, and other mental health impacts. The APA notes that these effects begin in utero when babies exposed to prenatally to weather disasters, high temperatures, and air pollution are at increased risk for social, cognitive, psychiatric, and behavioral dysfunctions. I can't vote. I'm way too young to run for office. The only way I can help my friends and protect their futures is by asking the EPA to protect us. As a mother and a doctor, I urge the EPA to maintain the 2009 endangerment finding. This is essential for safeguarding health and protecting future generations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. We are now at the end of our morning session. EPA, are you ready to recess for the scheduled lunch break?
Yes, Jennifer, and thanks everyone for this morning. And we'd like to resume at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
Thank you. We are now adjourning for a lunch break. The virtual meeting room will remain open. Please feel free to maintain your connections or rejoin a few minutes early. We will restart promptly at 1 p.m. Eastern. Thank you. I'd like to welcome you back to the U.S. EPA's virtual public hearing for the reconsideration of 2009 endangerment findings and greenhouse gas vehicle standards. My name is Jennifer, and I will serve as your meeting facilitator for today's hearing. We're now ready to resume the hearing. EPA, are you ready to get continued?
Yes, we are, Jennifer.
Thank you, Bill. We will now continue our public testimony. The speaker order is currently displayed on the screen and will be starting with panel 15. As a reminder, we ask that each person limit their verbal testimony to 2.5 minutes and speak slowly and clearly for the benefit of the court reporter and closed captioning team. Due to the large volume of registered speakers and registrants already on the wait list to provide oral testimony during this hearing, we will be strictly enforcing the 2.5-minute time limit for each speaker. Thank you in advance for your cooperation to ensure we hear from as many attendees as possible. If you have additional comments that you are unable to provide today, you can submit them through the docket at www.regulations.gov using docket ID EPA-HQ-OAR-2025-0194. I will now begin calling on each speaker one at a time in the order displayed on the screen. Please speak clearly so our court reporter can record these proceedings accurately. I apologize in advance for mispronouncing anyone's name. And our first speaker for panel 15 is Kim Cobb.
Does everybody hear me?
Yes, go ahead. You have 2.5 minutes.
Great. My name is Kim Cobb, and I'm the director of the Institute at Brown for Environment and Society and professor in the Department of Earth, Environmental, and Planetary Sciences at Brown University. My comments today do not reflect the opinions or positions of Brown. Today, I'm speaking as a climate scientist who cares deeply about the integrity of science, its use in evidence-based policymaking, and our collective future on a warming planet. I urge the EPA not to rescind the endangerment finding, which recognizes the escalating toll that climate change has on the health and welfare of all Americans. This is a shared but not equal burden. The steepest costs are borne by the least fortunate among us. 16 years ago, when the endangerment finding was established, it was already clear that climate change posed a threat to human health and well-being. That year, a dedicated chapter in the second National Climate Assessment outlined robust links between rising temperatures and heat-related illness and death, vector-borne disease, flood-related health threats, wildfires, and worsening air quality. Notably, its language was heavy on the projected health impacts of continued human-caused warming. Fast forward to today, and the health impacts of climate change are quantified in grim statistics compiled by a growing body of research focused on this area. Beyond these studies and statistics, newspaper headlines and news footage paint vivid pictures of the vast toll of human suffering and loss caused by climate-fueled extremes in recent years. Carbon dioxide may be a colorless, odorless gas, but it is by no means harmless. In the interest of time, today I will focus on the most direct links between greenhouse gases and human health, extreme heat. EPA data reveal a dramatic increase in extreme heat threatening communities across America. In the last 60 years, data indicate a tripling of heat wave frequency from 2 to 6 heat waves per year, and a tripling of the length of a heat wave season from 22 to 70 days per year. And yes, extreme heat, long topping the list of weather-related deaths in the US, is killing more people. Recent studies document a doubling in mortality rate from extreme heat just in the last 2 decades, whether through direct heat exhaustion and heat stroke or through heat-related exacerbation of underlying cardiac and respiratory conditions. The toll is staggering. In 2023, heat extremes killed over 2,000 people. In the United States, we have the largest per capita emitter of carbon dioxide because we are the largest per capita emitter of transportation emissions, mostly from cars and trucks. The EPA has a responsibility to regulate greenhouse gases for what they are, a clear, present, and growing threat to the health and well-being of every American. Thank you.
That's time. Thank you for your comments. Okay, before I call on our next speaker, we have a number of folks in panel 15 and 16 that are on Zoom, but we need you to accept the prompt to promote to panelists for us to be able to have you provide your testimony today. So when you see that prompt pop up, please accept it so you can move over to a panelist. Additionally, if you're able to rename yourself to the name that you registered under, it makes it a lot easier for us to find you on Zoom. With that, our next speaker is Jonathan Levenchush.
Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Levenchush. I'm the Director of Federal Energy Campaigns at the Sierra Club, the nation's largest grassroots environmental organization. I strongly oppose the EPA's reckless scheme to rescind the endangerment finding, which would eliminate the agency's requirement to protect people from the pollution that causes climate change. I also urge the agency to reject the rollback of all vehicle pollution standards under the endangerment finding umbrella. The current rules are cutting pollution, improving health, and saving consumers money. With this scheme, the president and the administrator are denying the danger of climate change. It's happening. The reality and the threat of extreme weather is undeniable. Last year in the United States alone, there were 27 extreme weather events, with losses surpassing $1 billion each. Unchecked climate change pollution is also impacting tens of millions of Americans every year. In Indiana, where my family and I live, we're experiencing more frequent heat waves and extreme rainfall events. These changes are affecting our state's agriculture economy, lower crop yields, poorer soil health, and an increase in the spread of pests and diseases. This shameful scheme puts Hoosier family farms at risk and will leave vulnerable Hoosiers suffering from food insecurity and malnutrition. It does nothing to bring down energy costs for Hoosiers, which are spiking because the president has put his thumb on the scale to keep expensive coal plants open instead of driving down prices with cheaper wind and solar power. And it makes more Hoosier families suffer from air pollution. It means more children have asthma attacks. It means more hospital visits and more missed work days. And it means more people will die prematurely. The EPA's mission is to protect people from the pollution that causes climate change and its impact to our environment and the economy. But the authors of this dangerous plan are clearly choosing to make matters worse. They'd rather let fossil fuel billionaires get richer by spewing climate-harming pollution into the air without limits, while we pay the price with our health, our wallets, and our lives. Please reject this horrible and dangerous scheme that will do so much damage to my family, my state, and our planet. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, and you know what is awesome about this is
Our next speaker, and I apologize for any mispronunciation, Rohit Sivananand.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm a second-year medical student at Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine and a volunteer EMT in Monmouth County. I'm here today to express opposition to efforts to weaken or repeal the EPA's endangerment finding. Prior to medical school, I worked full-time as an EMT. Although I've always been concerned for our climate, this experience greatly increased that base concern. A notable experience from just this past summer is that of the types of emergencies people face from outdoor graduations. Anybody who attended a graduation this year can attest to the incredible heat that led so many young children and grandparents attending to face heat-related emergencies such as heat exhaustion or even heat stroke. In the past 5 years, there has been a yearly increase of more than 6% in the incidence of heat-related emergencies. Another common type of emergency is air quality and pollution-related consequences. A particularly visceral example of this was with the Canadian wildfires of 2023, with a very visible decrease in air quality. Almost all 911 medical calls I attended to that day were people with common pre-existing conditions like asthma or COPD, experiencing difficulty breathing from simply walking outside. I remember one man in particular without any pre-existing condition who was cycling outside and still had to be given supplemental oxygen. 19% more Americans were exposed to unhealthy air quality compared to prior years. The cost to our state has been widely studied and estimated. The cost to New Jersey from climate-related emergencies alone is estimated to be anywhere from $30 to $200 million, while the overall cost to New Jersey, including consequences such as chronic disease, air pollution mortality, storm damage, and lost work, is estimated to be somewhere between $20 and $30 billion. On the other hand, protections can save hundreds of thousands of lives, preventing millions of asthma attacks, and cut health costs by over $1 trillion nationally, including billions in Jersey. The strong consensus on greenhouse gas-driven climate change is backed by decades of research and can't be ignored. The EPA's experts and courts have upheld the endangerment finding in the past. This isn't only about law, it's about protecting the health of our families and communities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, our next speaker is BJ McManana.
Thank you very much. And it's McManama, no problem. Good afternoon. My name is BJ McManama, and as an organizer and very thankful worker bee, I have been with the Indigenous Environmental Network for over 20 years. And as such, I have watched as people in this administration, the current administration's placing of people who fought reasonable and necessary limits on the toxic chemicals, the poisonous waste streams from the most polluting industries pumped and dumped into our air, water, lands, and bodies. Why? Because these industries know that they can't continue to do what they do if they are forced by law to eliminate the harm they have and continue to force on all of us. They cite these toxic operations in communities of the most vulnerable and who are unable to stop the most powerful from literally killing them. By eliminating this rule from all engines, not just the vehicle engines on our roads and overcrowded highways, no, all engines, this transparently obvious reconsidering of the endangerment rule of 2009 has little to do with auto and truck manufacturers. All engines have been included to cover fossil fuel powered generators because data centers, which are being built to increase the cryptocurrency and virtual wealth of the most powerful due to the level of funding and influence over our lawmakers, are able to do. One very prominent example is the Boxtown Black community on the outskirts of Memphis, who are now suffering from Elon Musk's XAI. The running of this polluting behemoth is only made possible by violating the Clean Air Act by running 35 unpermitted temporary methane gas turbines, which have been pumping out a level of emissions that, according to environmentalists, is exacerbating the health issues of an area already crushed by decades of pollution. And it will take years to provide the obscene amount of energy needed to power these facilities. In the short term, it will require engines, dozens of methane gas-fired turbines for power, which emit pollutants like nitrogen oxides and formaldehyde, just to name two of the half dozen already known. The speed and veracity of big tech, who can't wait to cover this country with massive computer hubs to create more crypto wealth and force unproven and dangerous artificial intelligence on us, but are constrained only by the lack of the billions of megawatts needed to power
That's
these
time. Thank you for your comments. Okay, our next speaker is Pete Waymiller.
Thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. And thank you for me to speak. The attempt to remove endangerment language on fossil fuel emissions is not science, it is politics. But politics cannot change the reality that fossil fuels are endangering health, economy, future. NASA,
Pete, I
NOAA,
apologize for the interruption. Your audio is going in and out quite a bit. I don't know if you can get closer to your speaker.
Okay, I'll try that.
Okay, let's try again. Thank you.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Okay. Can I start over?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Pete Waymiller. Thank you for letting me speak. The attempt to remove endangerment language on fossil fuel emissions is science. It is politics. Politics cannot change the reality that fossil fuels are endangering our health, our economy, future. Every major scientific even fuel companies,
Pete, I apologize. You're still going in and out a bit. I recommend turning your camera off. It may save your bandwidth and we'll be able to get your audio clearer.
Okay, very good.
And just keep continuing on. Thank you.
Okay, continue on for more.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Every major scientific body, NASA, NOAA, the World Health Organization, the IPCC, and even fossil fuel companies, scientists have learned for decades fossil fuels are the primary driver of climate change. The evidence is clear. More wildfires and toxic smoke, more costly floods, storms, more drought, famine, and illness from polluted air. This has staggering costs. Climate disasters and health impacts are already costing
Pete, I
trillions.
apologize. We are not able to accurately capture your comment. It's still coming in and out a lot. I recommend we'll put the message in the chat for you. I recommend calling in and let us know when you're back online and we'll get you back into the queue. Okay, our next speaker is Molly Collins.
Hi, I'm Molly Collins, born and raised and speaking today from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where it feels like all summer we've been experiencing the health impacts from climate change. I've always loved summers in Milwaukee where you can go to see live music or Shakespeare or art in different parks literally every night of the week all summer long. We are a city of ethnic and music festivals. We do summer really big here because you basically have to make up for the time you spend inside during the cold winters. But this summer, we've unfortunately had to spend a lot of time inside. We've had many days of extreme dangerous heat, of awful red and maroon air quality days, and less than 2 weeks ago, wild storms that led to devastating flooding throughout the county. Many of my friends and family lost so much, and it's unlikely that insurance will help. As I speak today, I can still see piles of trash on neighbors' lawns waiting to be collected because basement after basement flooded with feet of water. All of these extreme weather events are making us sick, both in the short and long term. And there's overwhelming scientific consensus that greenhouse gas emissions are accelerating climate change, and we must do more to ensure that public health is protected. For about 20 years, the Wisconsin Initiative on Climate Change Impacts, led by our state agencies and universities, has shared data demonstrating increases in warming, rain and snow, and more frequent extreme rainfall events. Statewide annual minimum temperatures have warmed by about 3 degrees Fahrenheit, and annual total precipitation in the southern part of the state has increased nearly 20% between 1950 and 2018. New analysis reaffirmed previous climate projections, indicating that many of these trends will continue, with wide-ranging consequences for Wisconsin's natural and built environments. I hope my kids, our community, and I can count on you to oppose this proposal to repeal the endangerment finding and greenhouse gas standards for vehicles. As Administrator Zeldin said, every American should have access to clean air, land, and water. We are counting on the EPA standards to protect us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, our next speaker is Rachel Meyer.
Hi, my name is Rachel Meyer. I'm the Ohio River Valley Field Organizer for Mom's Clean Air Force. I'm from Independence Township, Beaver County, in rural southwestern Pennsylvania. Every year, as more unprecedented wildfires, flooding storms, and dangerous heat waves impact communities across the country, the vital importance of the Clean Air Act's protections becomes increasingly apparent. The endangerment finding and tailpipe pollution standards must be upheld to protect health and public welfare now and to prevent further reaching negative impacts on our children's future. I see the petrochemical infrastructure, including fracking operations and an ethane cracker plant near my family's home, and know this all contributes a heavy load of climate warming pollution, including methane. Polling has found that more than 2/3 of voters in battleground and key oil and gas producing states support stronger standards on methane pollution. The need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions is top of mind as I think about the future my 6-year-old will grow up in. In 2017, I contracted Lyme disease. I missed about 2 weeks of teaching in my 2nd grade classroom and had ongoing symptoms for months. Growing tick populations are a harbinger of more diseases to come, with increased warming as areas previously too cold for disease vectors become able to support them. I also suffer from asthma triggered by ground level ozone. The Shell petrochemical facility near me, along with annually emitting 2 million tons of carbon dioxide, regularly exceeds its pollution limits for VOCs and nitrogen oxides. These pollutants combined with climate warming create the perfect conditions for elevated ozone levels. For me and the almost 17,000 other asthma sufferers in my county, this means more days gasping for air. Climate change is also an issue of generational justice for my daughter and her peers. Today's children will live through at least 3 times as many climate disasters as their grandparents. Our children deserve a healthy and livable future. We cannot afford to go backwards. The endangerment finding and limits on tailpipe pollution must be upheld, and the EPA must continue to provide crucial protections from climate change. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, while we keep troubleshooting with Pete, we're going to go ahead and move on to panel 16, where our first speaker is Emily Pickett.
My name is Emily Pickett. I'm a consultant for Mom's Clean Air Force. I live in Tampa, Florida, and I strongly oppose EPA's proposal to rescind the endangerment finding and clean cars and clean trucks standards. The endangerment finding is foundational to EPA's ability to protect us from the emissions that cause global warming, and the health of our families, communities, and future generations is what's at stake. As a lifelong Floridian, I can speak confidently from my lived experiences that we are witnessing the effects of global warming through the increased intensity of hurricanes making landfall in our state. Last year alone, my community was impacted by back-to-back hurricanes, Helene in September, followed by Milton in October. Helene brought catastrophic storm surge to our coastlines, with thousands of people losing everything to floodwaters. 2 weeks later, Milton, the most intense Atlantic hurricane ever recorded over the Gulf of Mexico, brought the highest winds I've ever experienced. Climate change is also making our oceans much warmer, which supercharges hurricanes. We boarded our home for the first time ever in preparation for the extreme wind. The morning after the storm, I was shocked to see the number of trees down and how high the water had risen in the streets from sheer amount of rainfall alone. In total, 76 people in Florida lost their lives as a result of those two storms. I witnessed firsthand the worst flooding, wind, and rain events in my life in a matter of a 2-week span. The science does back up this experience that storms are in fact worsening. Scientists from the World Weather Attribution Center hypothesized that without climate change, Milton would have made landfall as a Category 2 instead of a Category 3 storm. There is overwhelming scientific consensus that greenhouse gases, including those emitted by tailpipes, which account for the largest portion, 28% of total US climate pollution in 2022, are driving global warming and threatening human health. This evidence has only grown stronger since the endangerment finding was first issued in 2009. Rescinding the endangerment finding and climate pollution limits on tailpipes would threaten EPA's ability to protect us from the emissions that cause global warming and the wide range of health and environmental impacts that come with it, like ever-intensifying hurricanes. Attacking the legal basis for keeping communities healthy and safe makes no sense, which is why I strongly oppose EPA's proposal to rescind the endangerment finding and our Clean Cars and Clean Trucks protections. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, we're going to move back to Pete from panel 15 to try again. Pete Way Miller, go ahead. Okay, we can see you. I'm going to give you a prompt to unmute. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Okay, thank you again for your patience. I really appreciate that. I don't know where to start. I don't know what you've missed. And
I
what
would just go ahead and pause the timer. I would just start over.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And again, thank you again for allowing me to speak. The attempt to remove endangerment language on the fossil fuel emissions is not science, it's politics. But politics cannot change the reality that fossil fuels are endangering our health, our economy, and our future. Every major scientific body, NASA, NOAA, the World Health Organization, even the IPCC, and even fossil fuel companies' own scientists have confirmed for decades that fossil fuels are the primary driver of climate change. The evidence is clear: more wildfires and toxic smoke, more costly floods and storms, more drought and famine, and more illness from polluted air. Here in the Northwest, we breathe the wildfire smoke and we experience the heat bombs, the heat domes. We also have saltwater intrusion. I mean, you name it. And flooding, coastal flooding. These have staggering costs. Climate disasters and health impacts are already costing trillions of dollars, and the poor and the marginalized communities are hit the hardest. And this just is creating more environmental injustice. Since the 2009 endangerment finding, new studies have refined the data, but they reinforce, not weaken, the overwhelming consensus of global experts, contrary to political claims. For example, fossil fuel pollution has since proven to cause millions of premature deaths annually, including infant mortality. If this unscientific action to remove an accurate assessment is based on economic concerns, why hasn't a cost-benefit analysis included the cost of EPA's inaction on greenhouse gases, the proven driver of climate change? Fossil fuels are not the answer to energy poverty, as argued by politicians posing as environmental protectors. They make it worse. Renewables are the real solution. Studies from Oxford and the Lancet prove that renewable energy reduces energy poverty without poisoning our air or destabilizing our climate. These studies show that the most significant barriers to environmental protection from the overheating of our planet by fossil fuel emissions aren't technical, they're political. Cherry-picking outdated data to justify more pollution is not science. It's a page out of the same denial playbook used by the tobacco industry. The EPA's mission to protect human health and the environment, stripping the word endangerment from fossil fuel would betray that mission. Endangerment is not partisan. It is a scientific fact. If we erase that word, we erase truth. We cannot build a safe and prosperous future on a lie. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, moving back to panel 16. Our next speaker is Sofia Mora Ortega.
Hello. Can you see me?
I cannot. Let me give you a prompt.
Oh, there we go.
Hold on.
I think it's loading. Okay, I'll just begin. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Sofia Mora Ortega, and I am an environmental policy and research intern for Mom's Clean Air Force. I strongly oppose efforts to undermine the EPA's Clean Cars and Clean Trucks rules, as well as the endangerment finding, the legal foundation that protects families across the country from the emissions that lead to global warming. Emissions from industrial sources, burning fossil fuels to power our transportation systems and to generate electricity. In 2024 alone, our country endured 27 climate disasters that each caused at least $1 billion in damages. Communities across the U.S. are grappling with increasingly extreme weather that threatens their health, homes, and livelihoods. Wildfires fill our air with smoke, heat waves are breaking records, and floods are destroying neighborhoods. Living in Florida, I have seen the devastation brought on by climate change-fueled weather events, particularly floods and hurricanes. I've watched families be displaced, had school canceled for days on end, and seen communities left to recover with too little support and too few resources. Patterns like these are only getting worse. The threat to roll back the endangerment finding risks the lives of everyone in our communities, particularly the most vulnerable: children, the elderly, and those with chronic illnesses. Children's developing lungs, brains, and immune systems make them especially susceptible to the impacts of air pollution worsened by warming temperatures. I shouldn't have to weigh my desire to have children against the fear of the world that they will be born into. That's exactly what this moment demands. Further, not all communities bear the brunt of these harms equally. Across the country, it is often low-income neighborhoods, communities of color, and indigenous people that are forced to live closest to highways, industrial zones, and power plants, the sources of pollution driving climate change. These are the same communities that have the most limited resources to recover when disaster strikes or when health is impacted. Revoking the endangerment finding would only deepen these inequalities and send a clear message that some lives are worth protecting more than others. I urge the EPA to uphold and defend these important safeguards, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Karen Stein.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Kai. I am Iowa coordinator for Mom's Clean Air Force, and I speak from the heart because I love this planet deeply, and I love the three amazing human beings I brought into it even more. I think of myself as a South American girl, a Central American teenager, and a North American adult because I was born and raised in Colombia, spent my teenage years in Costa Rica, and came to Iowa on a student scholarship 45 years ago and stayed. I'm a farmer's daughter who grew up in very remote areas of Colombia and Costa Rica. In Iowa, I have lived in rural settings since I arrived. Because I have always been surrounded by nature, I have been able to observe small and large changes in the natural environment all over the Americas continuously for almost 64 years. The worsening changes I have seen in my lifetime are severe and devastating everywhere across borders. When I was little, the scientific community was beginning to sound the alarm about human-induced climate warming. Nowadays, I see not only increasingly destructive and frequent storms in Iowa that cost billions of dollars in damage, but I see devastating droughts in my original homeland in eastern Colombia that are threatening the livelihoods of family and friends there. In Costa Rica, I see changed rain patterns which are reducing biodiversity in the region in alarming ways, attributed by career scientists to the rapid heating of the planet due to human activities. I see people's lives being destroyed suddenly by massive climate events everywhere in Iowa and the rest of the Americas. My three daughters are in their 30s, and they have all but decided against bringing children into this world, in good part because of their concern about increasingly frequent climate disasters and the unwillingness of leaders to take strong action. They each have friends in Iowa whose family farms and lives were broken by historic floods along the Missouri or Mississippi rivers or their tributaries. My girls expect the next derecho storm to happen not every 15 or 10 years, but now every 3 or 4 years. I strongly oppose EPA's proposal to rescind the endangerment finding and climate pollution limits for tailpipes. What happens here affects the rest of the world. We all have the responsibility to do what's right for current and future children born on Earth. Please protect the endangerment finding and support limits on tailpipe emissions. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Peter Huther.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Peter Huther, and I'm a Senior Research Associate with the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, or ACEEE. Thank you for your opportunity today to testify on EPA's reconsideration of the 2009 endangerment finding and greenhouse gas vehicle standards. ACEEE does not support the repeal of the greenhouse gas standards for light duty, medium duty, and heavy duty vehicles. My testimony today will primarily speak to the light duty vehicle standards. These standards have numerous benefits, including significant cost savings for drivers. Vehicles with lower emissions are also vehicles that use less fuel, saving drivers thousands of dollars at a time when cost of living concerns are at an all-time high. However, without the light-duty standards, families will miss out on these fuel savings over the life of their vehicle, further straining their budgets. Electrified vehicles in particular also save drivers on maintenance costs over their lifetime, further enhancing the cost savings of the standards. These standards can also be met with existing proven technologies such as hybrid and electric vehicles that have surged in popularity in recent years. Repealing these standards would particularly hurt lower-income families who spend more of their budget on fuel. Our research has found that while the average household spends around 7% of their budget on fuel, low-income households spend closer to 14% of their budget on fuel. These are major costs that strain families' budgets, and repealing these standards would only strain them more. Light-duty vehicles are also a significant source of greenhouse gas emissions, contributing to worsening storms, heat waves, floods, and other effects of climate change. Climate change is already making natural disasters worse and extreme weather more frequent, damaging our economy and hurting families' pocketbooks. Rising temperatures would also lead to worsening health outcomes, including increased incidence of asthma, cancer, and other chronic illnesses. ACEEE would like to once again thank the EPA for the opportunity to speak today. More detailed input will be available in our submitted written comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Kaya Stanford.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Kaya Stanford, and I'm the Georgia State Coordinator for Moms Clean Air Force, a national organization of over 1.5 million moms, dads, and caregivers united to protect children from air pollution in our changing climate. I'm speaking to you today to urge the EPA not to rescind the endangerment finding or vital limits on greenhouse gas pollutions for motor vehicles. Revoking these safeguards would upend foundational goals of the EPA, sabotaging critical protections of public health and welfare. I'm originally from Decatur, Georgia, a suburb of Atlanta, so I'm no stranger to the hot weather denoted by the nickname of the city, Hotlanta. But that name has taken an entirely different meaning to my family and I in the last decade. We know that climate change is making heat waves longer and more severe, and we know that climate change is amplifying extreme weather events of all kinds and making air pollution worse. I have always been a part of the vulnerable medical population due to congenital heart disease and sensitive to air pollution. Although rare yellow and red air quality days meant summer days spent indoors as a child, despite hot weather, often associated with Atlanta, that still only meant a day or two during the school breaks in years past. According to the American Lung Association, Metro Atlanta registered 5.5 unhealthy days of ground level ozone pollution per year in 2024. In the year prior, that figure came out at just 1.8 days per year. Without the legal protections outlined by the endangerment finding and without critical limits on tailpipe pollution, what will those numbers look like in 5 years? I worry about what this means for the tens of thousands of children living in Atlanta and for children across the country. It is the EPA's responsibility to protect us from greenhouse gases from tailpipes and other sources. Again, I urge EPA not to rescind the endangerment finding or limits on tailpipe pollution for the sake of all of our futures. Uphold the science that we already have agreed upon to be true and keep the endangerment finding and limits on motor vehicle pollution intact. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Right, our next speaker is Giovanna Rossi.
Can you see me?
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Giovanna Rossi, and I'm a mom and a field organizer for Moms Clean Air Force living in Albuquerque, New Mexico. As a mom raising my children here in New Mexico, I'm deeply alarmed by the EPA's proposal to rescind the endangerment finding and limits on greenhouse gas pollution from vehicle tailpipes. I urge you to uphold and defend the endangerment finding and the vital protections it supports, including our clean cars and trucks standards. Here in New Mexico, we are already feeling the devastating effects of climate change: hotter summers, more extreme droughts, intense wildfires, dangerous floods. We recently lived through another record-breaking heat wave, and I worry every day about the air my kids breathe. My son plays soccer, and some days practice is canceled due to extreme heat or unhealthy air, which means he has to stay indoors. We know without a doubt that unchecked climate pollution leads to real and worsening health impacts, from heat exhaustion and asthma attacks to pregnancy complications and the mental trauma of living through extreme weather events. The cost of climate pollution is too high for inaction. Children especially are uniquely vulnerable. Their bodies and brains are still developing, and they are less able to adapt to extreme heat, polluted air, and the many cascading harms of a rapidly warming planet. Every child deserves the chance to grow up healthy, safe, and strong, and the EPA has a duty to help ensure that. Rescinding the endangerment finding would not only strip away critical protections, but it would also deepen existing inequalities. Here in New Mexico, frontline communities, often low-income families and communities of color, already bear the brunt of climate disasters. Weakening the EPA's ability to curb climate pollution from sources like tailpipes would leave them even more vulnerable. Meanwhile, the fossil fuel industry is making record profits. The endangerment finding is legally sound, scientifically irrefutable, and morally necessary. Overturning or undermining it would now be reckless, unjust, and would betray the EPA's core mission to protect human health and the environment. Our children depend on us. I'm calling on you as a mother, a community member, and a citizen to do your job. Defend the endangerment finding and climate pollution limits for motor vehicle tailpipes. Protect our kids, protect our future. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Eve Shapiro, and Eve is the final speaker for panel 16.
Hi, thank you. My name is Dr. Eve Shapiro. I'm a pediatrician, and I'm speaking on behalf of my patients since they can't vote. I am also from Arizona, a state that has seen increasing temperatures due to climate change with dramatic health effects. The EPA's mission is to protect people from the pollution that causes climate change and its impacts, such as extreme weather and health harms that threaten the lives of everyone, particularly the most vulnerable, which include children, the elderly, and those suffering from underlying medical conditions. These protections are a commitment to the health and safety of our children, their children, and future generations. With them, fewer children suffer asthma attacks, fewer people will die prematurely due to air pollution, and it means thousands of lives saved because we know that increasing particulates from pollution increases the risk of cardiovascular diseases. Trump and Zeldin are targeting protections against pollution that causes climate change, such as cleaner car and truck standards to power plant standards. Just after the world's hottest year on record, and with people still reeling from catastrophic climate disasters like the flash flooding in Texas, fires in LA, the hurricane flooding in North Carolina, and 143 straight days of over 100-degree heat in Phoenix, my state, it is shocking that the Trump administration would attempt this. By moving ahead to claim climate change and the pollution that causes it pose no threat to public health or the environment, the current administration is defying mountains of scientific evidence produced in thousands of studies demonstrating how climate change, fueled by climate pollution, is causing devastating impacts on people's lives. Their plan would let polluters get rich while we pay the price with our health, our wallets, and our lives. Please save the endangerment finding. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, we're now going to move on to panel 17, where our first speaker is Latricia Adams.
Good afternoon. My name is Latricia Adams, founder, CEO, and president of Young, Gifted, and Green. We are here today to express our profound opposition to the proposed repeal of the endangerment finding. This 2009 endangerment finding was a landmark decision rooted in years of scientific evidence that recognized that greenhouse gas emissions are a danger to public health and welfare. It has served as the legal and scientific backbone for critical regulations under the Clean Air Act, regulations that limit toxic air pollution and protect vulnerable communities. Repealing this finding is a direct attack on the health and future of our children across this nation. Particularly, Black communities like many in my hometown of Memphis, Tennessee, are disproportionately burdened by cumulative body burden and environmental hazards due to systemic racism and discriminatory practices. People who look like me are more likely to live near highways, industrial facilities, and other sources of pollution. This proximity leads to higher rates of respiratory illnesses, cancer, and other health problems. Even a 2021 EPA report found that Black Americans are 1.5 times more likely than white Americans to live in areas with the highest projected increases in pollution-related impacts due to climate change. Studies also show that air pollution and climate change exacerbates existing health disparities, disproportionately affecting Black mothers and their infants, as exposure to air pollutants during pregnancy increases the risk of preterm birth, low birth weight, and stillbirth. For example, a California study found that for every 10 degrees increase in temperature, preterm birth increased by an average of 8.6%. However, for Black women, that increase was almost 15%. Additionally, Black children are twice as likely to develop asthma as white children and are 10 times more likely to die from complications from the disease. The EPA's mission is supposed to be to protect human health and the environment. Repealing the endangerment finding directly contradicts this mission and abandons our nation's children and future generations, and it will also undermine years of progress in addressing climate change and public health protections. We urge the EPA to reconsider this dangerous and misguided proposal and uphold the endangerment finding.
Thank you for your comments. Right, our next speaker on panel 17 is speaker number 2, Maya Elric.
I am a New Mexico resident and homeowner and an earth science professor at the University of New Mexico. I am speaking out strongly against the reconsideration of the endangerment findings. My comments address how my professional life, my personal life, my health, and financial welfare are negatively affected by ongoing drought, excessive heat increases, and massive wildfires that are driven by the buildup of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. Professionally, the excessive summertime temperatures have reduced my ability and my students' ability to conduct field work, which is required of all earth science students and is required for my own research. My personal financial welfare has been negatively affected. Firstly, summertime temperatures have risen so high that my existing home cooling system was not able to maintain habitable daytime and nighttime temperatures. I had to invest $27,000 to install a new air conditioning system. Second, because excessive spring and summertime temperatures and the ongoing Southwest megadrought, wildfires are a constant threat to New Mexico. My homeowner's insurance covering these fire hazards has risen by 40% in the last decade. Third, because our winters are warmer and shorter, beetles that attack New Mexico forests are not killed off and are able to attack and kill our regional forests. In fact, in some of the regions, 80% of the trees have died due to beetle infestation, and this deadwood adds to the ongoing fire hazards. Around my own home, I have over a dozen pine trees, and I have to treat them annually by insecticides to protect them. This costs me $1,500 a year. The longer fire season caused by drought-induced wildfires causes common smoke-filled skies from March to November, and I am particularly sensitive to smoke. I am forced to stay indoors for many days. The EPA is attempting to revoke its own scientific findings, and this is embarrassing and shocking. I strongly ask you to not revoke and modify the 2009 endangerment findings. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, our next speaker is Frances Stewart.
Thank you. I'm a physician and part of Elders Climate Action's climate and health team. The accelerating climate change we are experiencing is human caused. Greenhouse gas emissions are the largest contributor, and most of those come from the burning of fossil fuels. Climate change is harming our health. We are facing multiple hazards, including increased heat, extreme weather events, wildfires, and worsening air pollution. This proposal would exacerbate climate change and air pollution. Every American is at risk, but some of us are at higher risk than others. The groups at increased risk include pregnant women, children, older adults, people with chronic diseases, and socially vulnerable persons. For this testimony, I will focus on older adults. We are a growing segment of the U.S. population. In 2019, 54 million people in the U.S. were age 65 or older. By 2040, that number is expected to be over 80 million. The physiologic changes that are part of healthy aging increase older adults' vulnerability to the effects of climate change and air pollution. Also, older persons are more likely to suffer from chronic diseases such as diabetes and heart disease, and disabilities like visual, hearing, or cognitive impairments. Those problems often cause difficulties in evacuating or taking other measures to deal with emergencies. Exposure to increased heat causes accelerated aging, which worsens all of these problems. We also see its effects in heart disease, respiratory illness, stroke, Alzheimer's disease, and Parkinson's disease. Being impacted by extreme weather events such as flooding or extreme storms or by wildfires puts older adults at risk of a wide range of illnesses, injuries, and other problems, including post-traumatic stress disorder, elder abuse, and neglect. Residents of nursing homes who are evacuated are at increased risk of mortality. Of course, failure to evacuate when needed is also life-threatening. Increased air pollution, especially PM10, PM2.5, and ozone, also increase the risk of poor health, including heart disease, stroke, depression, anxiety, dementia, Parkinson's disease, and death. I strongly urge EPA to preserve the endangerment finding. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Isela Ramirez.
Good afternoon. I am Isela Ramirez. I am the Executive Director of the Moving Forward Network. MFN is a national network of over 50 member organizations, including frontline and fence-line environmental justice organizations, environmental nonprofits or NGOs, individuals, and research institutions. We oppose the rescinding of the 2009 endangerment finding. Our network is based on over 20 U.S. cities and represents over 2 million people from communities that are negatively impacted by the goods movement system. Our members are actively fighting for clean air in cities and in regions that carry the brunt of the negative health and quality of life impacts from the various sources of toxic greenhouse gas emissions within the freight transportation system. So these trucks and locomotives, container ships and cranes and all the equipment that goods movement requires are a significant contributor to the climate crisis. And we've been demanding a zero emissions freight system since our inception over 10 years ago. No matter the party in power, our commitment to reach zero emissions is unwavering. And while we expected that the road towards zero emissions in freight would get longer as we entered the second Trump presidency, this current implosion tactic that you all are carrying forward is outrageous, and we reject it and we oppose it. The proposed actions from the US EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin are not only harmful, they are also reckless. The 2009 endangerment finding on climate emissions from 16 years ago is the underlying basis for EPA's regulatory responsibility to take actions that effectively address greenhouse gas emissions and pollution. And so denying science in order to ensure that the already overtly wealthy oil and gas industry proprietors can collect even more wealth that much faster will literally kill us. A recent study by the Environmental Defense Fund estimates that EPA's attack on our right to breathe clean air will result in an additional 184,000 premature deaths, 280,000 hospital and ER visits, 112 million asthma attacks. Your proposed actions to make it clear Mr. Zeldin, that you do not care about our environment or the people in this country. And that alone indicates that you are not fit to run this office. Do not rescind the 2009 finding. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Adrian Shelley.
Hello, my name is Adrian Shelley, and I'm the Texas Director of Public Citizen. I'm speaking in opposition to this proposal. The endangerment finding is based on broad scientific consensus about the causes and effects of climate change and on Supreme Court precedent. The reconsideration decision is plainly political, and it's based in climate denialism and ultimately protectionism of the fossil fuel industry. The decision that is being considered today will have tens of billions of dollars or more in the impacts, negative consequences every single year. To begin with, climate disasters. By some metrics, Texas is the most disaster-prone state. The $403 billion disasters that we've had since 1980, 47% of them have hit Texas. Increasingly, we are unprepared for these disasters. For example, the wildfires that happened in 2024 happened outside of our normal wildfire season. And because we are not accounting for the changing of those seasons due to climate change, we find ourselves increasingly unprepared. These problems will be exacerbated without cooperation from the federal government. One of the proposals along with this reconsideration is to eliminate the light duty and heavy duty vehicle pollution rules. In many of our large cities, including Houston and Dallas, 50% of the contribution to our ozone non-attainment status is vehicle pollution. Those two rules are expected to provide health benefits of more than $100 billion per year. The fiscal analysis of the rescission of those rules that EPA conducted was faulty. It's based on improper assumptions like declining EV sales and investment in solar and wind energy. It's based on an unrealistic assumption about gas prices declining and a faulty assumption that increasing demand from data centers will prop up fossil fuels. This is simply incorrect. More than 90% of the investment in energy in the United States over the last couple of years has been in clean energy, and that trend will continue. Climate denialism is also dangerous because of the impact to the insurance industry. Major insurers are leaving Texas, premiums are increasing, and homeowners are paying those prices. If we continue with climate denialism, we will not be able to address these and other wide-ranging impacts. And for those reasons, we oppose this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Corey Willis. Corey, we can see you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Corey Willis, and I'm here to provide feedback on the 2009 endangerment finding during this public hearing. As an automotive and emissions after treatment professional, I strongly support rescinding this finding, which has imposed a costly climate tax on Americans based on debated science, as evidenced by recent data and perspectives from experts like U.S. Secretary of Energy Chris Wright. The endangerment finding has led to stringent greenhouse gas emission standards that require advanced technologies in vehicles and heavy-duty equipment, such as improved aerodynamics that reduce the vehicle aesthetics, low rolling resistant tires, and powertrains made less efficient by increasing the after-treatment system dosing, adding to the burden of the emissions controls of the already burdensome after-treatment systems, diesel particulate filters, selective cat reduction, and exhaust gas recirculation. These combined requirements, with components often needing maintenance or replacement every 100 to 2,000 miles, necessitate frequent, expensive repairs. This creates a recurring financial burden, driving up the cost for trucking fleets, manufacturers, and everyday consumers. These costs cascade, inflating prices for groceries, fuel, and goods, contributing to billions in annual economic impacts without clear returns. It's a climate tax taxpayers never elected, with repairs often costing thousands of dollars per incident. From a scientific perspective, rescinding the finding aligns with a balanced view of climate data. As Secretary Chris Wright has highlighted, the Department of Energy's 2025 Climate Working Group report shows the 2009 assumptions are outdated, with emissions reductions having undetectably small global impacts. The report notes global emissions trends are overstated in models, and it points to global greening, where increased CO2 enhanced plant growth and agriculture productivity. Benefits overlooked. productivity, which are benefits that are overlooked originally. It challenges models that run hot, exaggerating warming while ignoring natural viability and historical data showing no U.S. trends in extreme weather and factors like solar activity. The science remains contested, with experts like Wright emphasizing the model's overstate impacts. As recent Trump administration transparency has shown, agency science, such as we've seen in the COVID times, may be weaponized for agendas, fear-mongering debated data, and blaming natural events on climate change. Experts avoid long-term models beyond 800,000 years for a reason. Rescinding this would lift unnecessary mandates, reduce strain, foster innovation, and build on the Trump EPA's advances. For America, it's pragmatic for prosperity and common sense. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker and final speaker for panel 17 is Jay Lennon.
I'm Jay Lennon, professor of biology at Indiana University, and I'm serving as the chair of the American Society for Microbiology's Applied and Environmental Microbiology Scientific Unit. Today, I'm going to give some comments on behalf of the American Society for Microbiology, which is one of the oldest and largest life science societies in the world. Our mission is to promote and advance the microbial sciences. That's because microbes touch on everything and are instrumental in the generation and consumption of warming gases, ecosystem stability, and human well-being. Since 2021, 5 years now, the American Academy of Microbiology has been undertaking a scientific portfolio on the topic of microbes and their role in climate change. Scientific reports resulting from this portfolio strongly support the EPA's 2009 endangerment finding and the EPA's conclusion that greenhouse gas emissions pose harm to the public health and welfare. The American Society of Microbiology urges the EPA to uphold the 2009 endangerment finding and continue to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. As the most abundant organisms on Earth, microbes make considerable contributions to climate systems and are greatly affected by changing climate themselves. Microbiologists have long studied the impact of climate on microbes, public health, and food production. Increased greenhouse gas emissions have direct impacts on microbial life. For example, increased CO2 concentrations both in water and in air promote the rapid growth of algae, phytoplankton, leading to harmful algal blooms. The ASM's climate work has found that shifts in temperature, precipitation, humidity, and CO2 concentrations and nutrient availability drive climate changes that can increase water and foodborne infections. Climate change-induced warming and severe storms will expand both the geographic and temporal range of plant pathogens, which have the implications for affecting crop yield and quality. At the same time, microbes can be part of a climate change solution, from developing sustainable bioproducts and using microbes to capture and mitigate greenhouse gas emissions. The American Society of Microbiology urges the EPA to take the body of scientific evidence documenting the impacts of climate change on microbes, public health, and agriculture into account when developing climate regulations. We stand ready to assist the EPA in developing and implementing microbial climate change solutions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Moving on to panel 18, our first speaker is Alice Liu.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Alice Liu. I am the policy analyst at Clean Air Council. Clean Air Council is a member-supported environmental organization serving Pennsylvania and the surrounding regions, and is dedicated to protecting everyone's right to a healthy environment. I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I hold a master's degree in public health in which I focused on environmental health and climate change in health. I thank the EPA for the opportunity to testify today. As a public health professional, I'm strongly opposed to the EPA's proposed rollback of the endangerment finding. Climate change is already impacting our lives. Ask any resident of the Philadelphia region and they will tell you this summer was unlike any other. We experienced heat wave after heat wave, dry spells, but also frequent flooding, and poor air quality days from migrating wildfire smoke. In our lifetime, we have seen that our climate is changing, and the primary driver of these changes is climate-forcing greenhouse gases created by human activities. The endangerment finding plays a critical role in tackling harmful climate change, and rolling back this determination will be detrimental to EPA's ability to protect Americans from the existential threat of climate change. The endangerment finding is a scientific truth that is supported by numerous peer-reviewed scientific studies. Greenhouse gases are changing our climate and subsequently harming our health and well-being. EPA's proposal to revoke the endangerment finding will not change the fact that climate change is real. All it will do is serve as a free pass for corporations to continue polluting our environment and threatening American lives. Indeed, the Trump administration's denial of verified facts will cost Americans more in energy bills, consumer goods, healthcare costs, and the loss of thousands of good-paying jobs. Health outcomes, in particular, will worsen with Trump's chaotic approach to climate. Specifically, increased air pollution will likely drive up incidences of asthma and other respiratory and cardiovascular diseases. This will be in addition to the health issues posed by increasing temperatures, extreme weather, wildfires, and sea level rise. I urge the EPA to not move forward with repealing the endangerment finding and instead focus on its core mission of protecting human health and the environment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, our next speaker is Lauren Pagel.
Hello, my name is Lauren Pagel. I'm the Policy Director at Earthworks. We work with communities impacted by extraction, including oil, gas, and mining, families who live every day with the health and climate harms caused by methane pollution. I'm here to urge EPA to reject any plans to eliminate the endangerment finding for greenhouse gas pollution. Earthworks is regularly in the field with industry standard optical gas imaging cameras that make invisible methane pollution visible. We document unlit flares, venting pollution, malfunctioning equipment that releases carcinogens like benzene and toluene, along with smog-forming VOCs and methane, a powerful climate pollutant. What we see in places like Pennsylvania, Texas, Colorado, New Mexico is staggering. Plumes of methane pollution near hospitals, homes, and schools. And this pollution has well-documented health consequences. Air pollution from oil and gas methane emissions contributes to an estimated 750,000 summertime asthma attacks in children every year. Older adults face heightened risk of cardiovascular problems, cognitive decline. Pregnant women are more likely to experience complications in places with more oil and gas pollution. Rescinding the endangerment finding would strip away one of the most important tools communities have to protect themselves from methane pollution. And we know the oil and gas industry will not police itself. Voluntary pledges fail and regulators cannot keep up. Without science-based standards, families will be left to breathe poisoned air. And we all know that the impacts of a rapidly warming planet are here. Texans face deadly floods, hurricanes, and freezes. Droughts are worsening in Colorado and Mexico. Fires across the West, climate-fueled, choking communities with smog and taking lives. Rolling back the endangerment finding will not reduce the price of oil or make it easier for families to avoid groceries. What it will do is protect billionaire polluters, leaving the public to pay the price in medical bills, disaster recovery, and lost lives. We urge EPA to put people first and keep the endangerment finding. Communities deserve clean air and a stable climate, not more harmful pollution.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Michael Hartrick.
Hi, I am testifying today on behalf of the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. Auto Innovators member companies have long advocated for policies that ensure the U.S. auto industry remains globally competitive, including a stable regulatory environment and reasonable, achievable standards for continuing improvements in emissions and fuel economy while preserving consumer choice. While we believe the administration's actions are intended to move toward greater long-term certainty, we are concerned about near-term uncertainty while the merits of the proposal are considered. Our primary concern is the potential outcome of unachievable standards if EPA chooses not to proceed with its proposal, or if the final action faces prolonged legal challenges. Last year, EPA finalized light-duty vehicle greenhouse gas standards premised on the U.S. auto market reaching over 30% electric vehicle sales by 2027 and about 70% by 2032. EPA similarly assumed massive growth in the medium-duty EV market. Since then, we've witnessed a flattening of the EV market in the U.S. with weaker consumer demand and EV-related incentives that have either been curtailed or terminated. In July 2025, light-duty EV sales were 9.8% of the market. Recent forecasts for EV market share are also much lower than the levels previously projected by EPA. Most model year 2027 vehicles will become available in the next 5 to 12 months. It is difficult to imagine how EV sales could possibly triple to over 30% in the next year and more than double again 5 years later to reach 70%. We recommend that EPA issue a GHG interim final rule or another form of action for 2025 and later model years to provide near-term certainty, serve as a backstop to the proposal, and to document why previously finalized standards are not appropriate. Similar to the GHG standards, the recently finalized criteria emission standards for light and medium-duty vehicles are largely premised on rapid increases in electric vehicle market share, while at the same time adding hundreds of dollars of cost to internal combustion engine vehicles. These standards undermine the administration's intent to address EV mandates and vehicle affordability. Automakers are urgently seeking action to revise the light and medium-duty criteria emission standards in a separate rulemaking. Thank you for your time today. We look forward to submitting additional comments.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Margareta Beltry.
Sorry, trying to get my video up. Thank you very much. My name is Margareta Veltri, and I'm here today speaking on behalf of the Blue-Green Alliance, which unites some of America's largest labor unions and environmental organizations. The world's leading scientific organizations agree that climate change is an urgent threat. To avoid the increasingly catastrophic consequences of climate change, we must ensure a rapid reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. At the same time, strategies to reduce emissions must benefit working people. The Blue-Green Alliance is deeply concerned by the administration's position that climate change concerns cannot satisfy the statutory standard for regulation under the Clean Air Act. Our government has a responsibility to protect workers and communities from climate disaster. Ignoring this threat abandons the millions of Americans who are increasingly likely to experience worsening health impacts, extreme and deadly weather, crop failures, displacement, and more. Regulatory rollbacks are not what American workers and communities need. Contrary to EPA's claims, common sense standards like those issued under the Clean Air Act can drive research, innovation, and manufacturing to create jobs and stimulate economic growth. EPA's endangerment finding establishes a foundation to regulate harmful emissions, including from oil and gas operations and from vehicles. Reducing these emissions has shown that America's environmental challenges can also be economic opportunities. For example, standards for controlling fugitive emissions from the oil and gas industry prevent methane and other dangerous pollutants from leaking into the air. These standards create jobs by driving the deployment of cost-effective, available technology and practices to reduce methane leaks. Likewise, Blue-Green Alliance's research has consistently shown that the EPA's vehicle standards have a positive impact on the U.S. manufacturing sector. There are currently more than 410,000 workers and more than 2,000 U.S. facilities building technologies that reduce pollution and improve fuel economy for vehicles. In a rapidly advancing global marketplace for vehicles, securing U.S. manufacturing jobs and creating new ones requires domestic innovation and investment. Turning away from common sense standards not only threatens our environment, it puts hundreds of thousands of domestic manufacturing jobs at risk. In proposing to rescind the endangerment findings and GHG vehicle standards, the EPA fails to safeguard workers, communities, and the environment. We urge the administration to reconsider its proposal and work towards a revised approach that prioritizes the environment and American workers. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker, and I apologize for any mispronunciation, Michael Kudransky.
That's right. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments today. My name is Michael Kudransky, Senior Director, speaking on behalf of Series to express our opposition to the rollback of EPA's vehicle emission standards. Series is a national nonprofit organization that has been at the forefront of engaging businesses on innovative market and policy solutions to address the world's most pressing sustainability issues. We lead several influential networks, including the Policy Network, a coalition of 80 major businesses, including some of the most well-known brands in the US, the Series Investor Network, and the Corporate Electric Vehicle Alliance, a coalition of major companies and fleet operators that collectively own, lease, or operate more than 2.7 million fleet or network vehicles in the US. Businesses across our network seek greater availability of clean vehicles to capture operational cost savings, meet air quality goals, and protect the health and security of their communities, customers, and employees. They recognize that strong standards will drive investment in domestically made clean vehicles, without which the U.S. auto industry will increasingly be unable to produce clean vehicles that are cost competitive with foreign automakers. The U.S. currently lags the European Union, China in EV sales. When suitable clean vehicle models are available, corporate fleets often face long wait times for their delivery. Failing to maintain the existing vehicle emission standards would undermine the U.S.'s efforts to create a globally competitive domestic vehicle supply chain and put our members' business strategies at risk. The Corporate Electric Vehicle Alliance alone represents robust demand for clean vehicles, with members planning to procure approximately 330,000 EVs under a supportive market environment as soon as 2026. While recent investments in the automotive sector have supported increased availability of commercial clean vehicles in the U.S., major fleet operators still face difficulties in procuring the volume and model configuration required to serve their operational needs and meet their ambitious long-term goals. As major operators of light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles, Alliance members and their peers rely in large part on vehicle emission standards to improve overall vehicle efficiency, thus closing the gap between supply and demand for cleaner vehicles and limiting the extent to which automakers must pass the cost of efficient and zero-emission technologies onto consumers. At the time of their adoption, the 2024 EPA vehicle emission standards had been endorsed by more than 125 businesses and investors. These supportive companies represent over $245 billion in annual revenue and have employees in all 50 states. And with that, thank you again.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, our next speaker is Robert Howarth.
Thank you. I'm Robert Howarth. I'm an Earth System scientist and longtime faculty member at Cornell University. The views I express today are my own and should not be construed as a position of Cornell. I've conducted research on the causes and consequences of climate change for over 40 years, and I've taught regularly classes on climate change at Cornell for more than 40 years. Over 5,000 students have learned some aspect of climate change in my courses. I strongly oppose the proposed reversal by EPA of the endangerment finding. By 2009, when the endangerment finding was signed by the then administrator, there was near universal scientific consensus on climate change. Nearly all scientists with expertise in the climate arena agreed that the climate was warming globally, caused largely by emissions of carbon dioxide, methane, and other greenhouse gases from our use of fossil fuels. And the science has only become more clear since then. Any rollback of the endangerment finding would not be based on science. It would be based on raw politics in contradiction of the science. I'd like to address two statements from the summary for the draft retrenchment document. One of those says that implies that most emissions are foreign, and so we do not need to be concerned about U.S. emissions. That, at best, is a misleading statement. Over time, since the start of the Industrial Revolution, the United States has produced more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than any other country over the last decade. And currently, we are the second largest producer of greenhouse gases of any country. And our greenhouse gas emissions per capita are among the very, very highest of any country. The summary for the retrenchment document also states that the damage in the US now is less than was thought at the time of the 2009 finding. And that is just completely false. The science on how to attribute damage to climate has become much, much stronger since 2009. We now know that the intensity of floods, droughts, fires are tied, at least in part, to climate change. These environmental consequences are becoming larger, and climate change is largely responsible for that. My own research involves water quality in part, and climate change has aggravated nutrient pollution and harmful algal blooms in the waters of the United States. So thank you for the chance to talk.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is the final speaker for panel 18, Abigail Cruz.
My name is Abby Cruz from Reston, Virginia. I'm here in affiliation with Mothers Out Front, a grassroots organization dedicated to climate change. I'm a working mom to a nearly 1-year-old. It's because of my son that I am compelled to say something today. Rescinding the endangerment finding not only makes the world more dangerous for my child and for yours, repealing the endangerment finding will harm American children. It's well established that greenhouse gas emissions cause air pollution and contribute to increased frequency and severity of extreme weather events. Air pollution has a direct impact on human health. PM 2.5 pollution, a byproduct of burning fossil fuels, is especially dangerous for children, causing many negative health outcomes, including asthma, reduction in brain volumes, behavioral dysfunction, and impaired lung growth. This is a fact. Burning fossil fuels creates dangerous air pollution. By rescinding the endangerment finding, more children will suffer. In 2024, there were 27 individual extreme weather events in the US that caused over $1 billion in damages. That damage is infrastructure people rely on. It's food, it's homes, it's a child's safe place and stability. By repealing the endangerment finding, more extreme weather means more children will lose things that can't easily be replaced, and some will lose their lives. Although I'm not a medical or weather researcher, I can confidently speak to these harms because the evidence is conclusive, established, and there is scientific consensus. I am outraged that an agency whose mission is to protect human health and the environment is considering a fundamentally anti-science, anti-health, and regressive policy change. In addition to causing human suffering, rescinding the endangerment finding would be a denial of what is true, an abdication of our responsibilities to our children and to each other, and a moral failure. How do I explain such a decision to my son? How do I explain that we are choosing to make a more dangerous world for him? My voice reflects the concerns and pleas of American parents. I know because I talk to them at daycare pickup, in the cul-de-sac, and on Zoom calls with coworkers from across the country. I hope you'll stand with families to ensure our children's health, safety, and future are protected. Thank you for the time.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, moving on to panel 19. Our first speaker is Thomas Caffery.
Good afternoon. For the past 4 decades, there's been broad scientific consensus that greenhouse gases cause climate warming. CO2 concentrations have been climbing steadily since the Industrial Revolution and rising exponentially since the 70s with more widespread industrialization and urbanization. The evidence is clear in my lifetime of living in Florida. Rising average temperatures are setting new records year over year. Rising ocean and Gulf temperatures are contributing to stronger, wetter hurricanes, and rising sea level is causing frequent sunny day flooding in South Florida and increasing the severity of storm surge from hurricanes. All the multi-billion-dollar climate catastrophes being experienced in the USA, as well as elsewhere across the globe, are painful evidence that the climate is changing before our very eyes. Historic flooding in the hill country of Texas, as well as North Carolina, wildfires in our national parks, as well as our urban landscapes, smoke causing hazardous air quality in cities hundreds of miles away, the bleaching of corals threatening the ocean ecosystems and seafood fisheries, as well as tourist revenue. All of these can no longer be dismissed as once-in-a-lifetime event. Our home insurance companies are recognizing the increased level of threats, leading to higher insurance rates. The long-term cost of adaptation to extreme sea level rise would be astronomical, reconfiguring life on the coast as we know it. There may be a concern that our USA self-regulation of greenhouse gas emissions may not affect the global climate, so what we do doesn't matter. But that is what the Paris Climate Accords were for, and Kyoto before it. We must continue to lead the world in reducing the CO2 concentrations while pioneering the most cost-effective methods to do so. We should be adopting much more widely the proven technologies for electric vehicles and the clean energy sources available to power our transportation and overall urban development. As the old saying goes, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Jennifer Lewis.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Lewis, and I am the Vice President of Regulatory Affairs for MEMA, the Vehicle Suppliers Association. MEMA represents more than 1,000 vehicle supplier companies across the United States, including original equipment and aftermarket suppliers for light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles. Our members form the largest manufacturing sector in the country, employing over 900,000 Americans directly and supporting more than 4.8 million jobs in related industries. My remarks today highlight 3 critical areas where suppliers will be impacted by EPA's proposal. First, R&D investments and potential losses. The mobility sector is a major source of foreign direct investment in the U.S., upwards of $195.6 billion in 2023. For more than 15 years, MEMA members have invested in research, development, and advanced manufacturing capacity to meet or exceed existing greenhouse gas standards. These technologies are now complete. They're ready to be used for compliance, and eliminating the regulatory framework and associated credit mechanisms will lead to stranded investments. 2, supply chain stability and U.S. jobs. The supplier sector depends on long-term regulatory stability and especially consistency to guide capital investments and workforce planning. Uncertainty in emissions regulations could detract further investment, facility build-outs, and job creation. 3, our members are deeply concerned about the erosion of global competitiveness. MEMA's members not only manufacture products here for the U.S., but compete globally in markets with existing emission standards. Recent reports from the ITC cite increased investment in U.S. automotive manufacturing, with the U.S. being the primary recipient in the USMCA region. If U.S. policy diverges sharply from global norms, U.S. suppliers may fall behind and become out-innovated by foreign competitors who are building to stricter global standards. MEMA does not want to see the U.S. become a manufacturing island. We are committed to work with the EPA on solutions that provide consumers with choice, keep the U.S. supplier base competitive globally, and ensure that MEMA's past and future investments in innovation continue to benefit the market, the workforce, and the U.S. economy. Thank you for the opportunity to share our perspective today. We look forward to discussing more in our
That's
written
time.
comments.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Rebecca Clark.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
So my name is Rebecca Clark, and I live in Sheboygan County, Wisconsin, on the shores of Lake Michigan between Milwaukee and Green Bay. For decades, Sheboygan has had the worst ozone pollution in Wisconsin, and we currently rank 24th in the nation. We residents have relied on the EPA to assist our Department of Natural Resources with pollution reduction efforts, like vehicle emissions testing and enhanced ozone studies. But with this proposed rule, the EPA isn't just denying the science behind greenhouse gases and their impacts on public health. You're turning your back on communities like mine. For the past 10 years, I've worked closely with EPA Region 5 staff. They've been helpful, responsive, and deeply committed to helping us understand ozone formation in the Great Lakes region. And yes, being bumped up to serious non-attainment has been hard for our industries. Sheboygan is a heavy manufacturing county. But the one area where we can do more is, according to studies, is transportation. Our power plants have made real progress in reducing emissions, which I hope stays that way. But cleaner, more efficient vehicles are our best shot at breathing easier. This summer alone, our EPA ozone monitor in Sheboygan hit a peak of 105.8 parts per billion. We've had 28 air quality advisories for ozone and PM 2.5. In a place like Sheboygan where summers are short, we shouldn't have to spend them indoors. You don't have to see ozone, you can feel it. And as a smaller population county, we don't qualify for CDC studies on air quality health impacts. That's why we rely on the EPA to monitor, regulate, and enforce improvements. This would be a painful step backwards, and it would impede growth in our area. Who wants to move to a county where your kids can't play outside at summer camp? So I urge you, don't turn your back on science. Don't turn your back on Sheboygan County. There's still so much work to do, and I hope to continue working with EPA Region 5 to finally breathe easier in the Lake Michigan area. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, our next speaker is Michael Diadamo.
Yes, thank you. It's
Thanks for the opportunity to express my opinion. My name is Dr. Michael D'Adamo, and I'm a volunteer with the Sierra Club. Most science proceeds with the premise that your ideas are incorrect until you have proven with strong statistical support that your ideas have merit. With this proposal rule change, the leadership of the EPA has proceeded instead by shooting the arrow and then painting the bullseye around it. The advocates of this proposal make the claim that the EPA is only authorized to regulate air pollutants that cause limited geographic harm. They claim that GHGs have adverse effects far removed in time and location from the source and therefore not subject to regulation. There is little to no support for this conclusion in the data. Most of the research demonstrates beyond a reasonable doubt that the effects of GHG emissions are both far-reaching and local in this atmosphere of our planet. Moreover, the claim is made that there is insufficient reliable information to retain the conclusion that GHG emissions from new motor vehicles and engines in the USA cause or contribute to endangerment to public health and welfare in the form of global climate change. Again, the data substantially refutes this conclusion. Science proceeds on the basis of respect for the preponderance of sound scientific data. In most fields of investigation, outlying data tied to limitations of various types of research designs or outright flaws in the research are present. This proposal ignores that reality and gives too much credibility to fringe data. Such is the attitude towards science and common sense in this administration. But in this instance, people are going to suffer. There are significant and toxic effects to pollution that have been well established that are both local and distant and related significantly to emissions from the transportation sector. But those concerns do not seem to matter much to this administration focused on profits at whatever cost to people and the environment. The EPA's mission to protect the public has been abandoned. This proposal is conspicuous in its acknowledgement that the goals of the EPA have been replaced. I hope that you will uphold what is decent and humane and abandon this course of action. Thanks again for the opportunity to express my views. Hopefully this tradition of hearing individuals' voices will not be suppressed.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, our next speaker, and I apologize for any mispronunciation of names, is Kathleen Sagama.
Hello, I'm Kathleen Scama with Multiple Use Advocacy. Having trouble getting my camera started, so I'll just proceed. I had carefully prepared comments, but I just feel compelled to react to some of the misinformation that we've heard. I strongly support EPA's proposal to rescind the endangerment finding. What I do find shocking and embarrassing, in the words of a previous speaker, is that a professor at the University of New Mexico could spend her entire 2.5 minutes on anecdotal stories, including her failure to properly maintain her air conditioning. As a mother, I also urge all the mothers to stop stressing out about unscientific misinformation about your children being in danger from climate change. They'd be in much more danger without the benefits of affordable, abundant energy. Indeed, most of the comments show why the related Energy Department review of the impacts of greenhouse gas emissions are so critical. Many of the alarmist comments EPA has had to listen to all week, and there are several creative things blamed on climate change, are not supported by the science or are misrepresentations of the best IPCC reviewed science. These sessions show why the work of Administrator Zeldin and Secretary Wright is so important. The bottom line is we could stop all fossil fuel use in the United States, and in the words of former climate czar John Kerry, it would have no impact on climate change. Modeling shows that doing so would reduce global temperatures by a minuscule 0.052 degrees Celsius, within the margin of error of plus or minus 0.1 degrees Celsius. Regulating a single source category, such as vehicles, would have even less significance, which means that EPA cannot meet Section 111 requirements to show that greenhouse gas emissions from vehicles contribute significantly and endanger public health. Therefore, overturning the 2009 endangerment finding is the proper course of action. thank you so much for taking this action and for this hearing today.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Denise Neprou.
Yes, hello, thank you. Denise Neviu. Yes, my name is Denise Neviu, and I am calling in today from Durham, North Carolina, where I am an occupational therapist and educator. As a member of Carolina Advocates for Climate, Health, and Equity and Occupational Therapists for Environmental Action, I am attending today to speak in opposition to EPA's proposal to repeal the endangerment finding and greenhouse gas standards for vehicles. I'll be speaking from my personal experience today. I live in the Piedmont area of North Carolina, where we are experiencing escalating summer heat, storm activity, and floods, which science has shown to be associated with climate change. Last month, Tropical Storm Chantal brought severe flash flooding, making roads impassable and necessitating dozens of swift water rescues. Some of my neighbors' homes were flooded. One had sewage backup in her home. The water reclamation plant in my town was down for 4 days, and we were asked, understandably, not to use any city water at all so that the reserves could be available for fires or other emergencies. The nearby Haw River rose to its highest historic levels in a matter of hours, flooding much of the town of Saxapaw. The river is still so contaminated from the flood that it's not safe for fishing or swimming. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin assured us of access to clean air, land, and water for all Americans. Here in the Piedmont, we can count on none of these. As an occupational therapist, I know that disaster brings tremendous risk and loss, especially for people with disabilities and mobility challenges, children, older adults, and those who have few financial resources to enable them to prepare, adapt, or recover. After a disaster, occupational therapy clients and communities understandably wish to resume their daily lives and activities just as before, and indeed it's heartening to see the community come together to enable recovery. But the reality is that with human-caused climate change, extreme weather events, including heat domes and 500-year floods, are becoming the norm, not the exception. They are more frequent, more intense, and reach places where people thought they were safe. How many more times, for industry's short-term profit, will our Piedmont communities need to risk our lives and health in surviving and recovering from?
Thank you for your comments. Okay, our next and final speaker for panel 19 is Lisa Brenskell.
Brenskell. I'm calling from Houston, Texas. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, the U.S. Global Change Research Program, the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration all consistently state that human-caused greenhouse gas emissions are the primary cause of observed climate change. Therefore, when addressing how greenhouse gas emissions endanger public health, climate change must be considered. Per the Centers for Disease Control, there are principally two sources of endangerment to public health from climate change: much more severe natural disasters and other human health impacts. Much more severe natural disasters include precipitation extremes, temperature extremes, and wildfires. Precipitation extremes lead to severe flooding, which is the second highest natural disaster cause of death, whereas heat waves from temperature extremes are the leading natural disaster cause of death. For wildfires, direct deaths are far less than indirect deaths due to PM 2.5 particles polluting the air. All of these natural disasters, made much more severe by climate change, also cause other negative health impacts, such as, for flooding, waterborne disease outbreaks and mold contamination; for wildfires, breathing and heart-related hospitalizations, bronchitis, chest pain, COPD, respiratory infections, and asthma attacks. Other human health impacts include air pollution from greenhouse gases, such as ground-level ozone caused by methane, increase in allergens and pollen, food insecurity, and spread of vector-borne diseases. Air pollution is causing premature deaths in the U.S., which will increase with increasing air pollution due to greenhouse gases. Allergens and pollen are linked to asthma attacks and increased hospital admissions for respiratory issues. Climate change threatens food production, quality, prices, and distribution systems, causing impacts from malnutrition to obesity. For vector-borne diseases, climate change can lead to shifts or expansions in their geographic ranges, which can alter disease incidence. It is clear that public health is endangered by climate change and thereby by greenhouse gases. The endangerment finding and greenhouse vehicle standards must stand. Thank you for listening to my comments.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, moving on to panel 20, and our first speaker is Sarah Rose.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Good afternoon, my name is Sarah Rose. I'm a senior citizen and a grandmother. I'm speaking to you today, not as a scientist or a lawyer, but as a concerned citizen who is afraid of the consequences of revoking the endangerment finding of the Clean Air Act, which means the greenhouse gases and emissions on vehicles and engines would either be lowered or not regulated. This proposal, which I strongly oppose, is illogical to me, since all air pollution, specifically greenhouse gas emissions, causes harm to human beings, wildlife, and our planet's environment. As a person who grew up in the western part of Pennsylvania before the Clean Air Act was passed in 1963 and well before 2009, I am all too aware of what air pollution does and can do. I remember visiting Pittsburgh as a young person, where a smoky haze from Pittsburgh's factories and vehicles surrounded the city. In fact, Pittsburgh was known as the Smoky City, but Johnstown, where I grew up, was not much better. Several people in my family, my two grandfathers and my two uncles, died young in their 40s and 50s of cardiovascular and pulmonary diseases. The rest of my grandmother's children, including my own mother, died of Alzheimer's and or got dementia in their later years. What did these people all have in common? Well, they grew up in the air polluted environment of Johnstown. Now we know that air pollution has a negative effect on our body's health and our body's systems, especially the cardiovascular and neurological systems. And it has been linked to dementia and is now viewed as a possible cause of Alzheimer's. Therefore, I do not want other people and living beings to be debilitated by polluted air. And so I am requesting, I'm begging that you not roll back the endangerment finding and make sure that greenhouse gases are regulated for the sake of our planet, its inhabitants, and for our future. Thank you.
For your comments. Okay, our next speaker is Emma Zemino.
Hi, thank you. Connecticut strongly opposes EPA's proposal to rescind the endangerment finding and repeal all motor vehicle greenhouse gas emission standards. This proposal is extraordinarily harmful. According to EPA's own analyses, it will cause massive increases in CO2 and fine particulate emissions. The federal government is retreating from national preparedness, resiliency, and health and public safety protections at a time when the devastating and deadly impacts of climate change are already being felt by state and local jurisdictions. The endangerment finding was correctly determined as it is predicated on consensus-based science and well-established facts, linking increased human-caused GHG emissions to increases in global surface temperatures. These increases have already and will continue to significantly endanger public health and the environment across the U.S. Connecticut is already experiencing the impacts of climate change, including record-breaking heat, drought, and wildfires. In 2024, one storm dropped up to 16 inches of rain in less than 8 hours, causing severe flooding, which led to 3 tragic deaths and over $200 million in damage to more than 2,300 homes and businesses. Disasters strain public health systems, damage infrastructure, and displace families and communities. Repealing the endangerment finding and the GHG emission standards creates a federal policy of inaction at the exact moment climate disasters are accelerating. EPA must also do its job to regulate emissions from motor vehicles. With Section 202A of the Clean Air Act, Congress explicitly charged the EPA with regulating motor vehicle emissions. In Connecticut, the transportation sector is responsible for about 40% of GHG emissions and 70% of smog-forming emissions. These pollutants worsen asthma, heart disease, and respiratory illness, especially for our most vulnerable. Respiratory-related illnesses cost Connecticut tens of millions of dollars annually. We incurred nearly $120 million in acute care charges due to asthma in 2023 alone. Without federal regulation, greenhouse gas emissions will rise substantially, fueling extreme weather events and increasing temperatures, leading to more days on which Connecticut residents experience unhealthy levels of ozone. The EPA has a legal obligation and a moral responsibility to protect the public health. EPA must abandon this proposal, uphold the endangerment finding, and leave the current standards in place to better advance our efforts to achieve clean air, address climate change, and protect public health. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, our next speaker is Mika Kraus.
Hello, I'm unable to start my video.
I'll give you a prompt.
Okay, there we go. Hi, my name is Micah Kraus, and I'm the founder of Big Mountain Impact, an environmental communications firm in Asheville, North Carolina, the same Asheville that was decimated by Hurricane Helene, a climate disaster that cost our state alone $60 billion, and more importantly, took at least 250 lives across our country. It was the deadliest storm beyond Hurricane Katrina. I'm here today to strongly urge the EPA to uphold the endangerment finding. Revoking these protections would not only jeopardize our public health, but would be devastating for our economy. The risks from unregulated emissions are real, measurable, and growing. Beyond escalating natural disasters, the climate crisis threatens workplace productivity, disrupts supply chains, and drives up public health costs. Extreme weather increases delays, rerouting costs, inventory losses, and really affects business from every different angle because they rely on reliable logistics. You can take it from me because many of my clients are global enterprises with robust climate risk software and teams dedicated to assessing this risk and where they put different operations. You think you're helping businesses, but you're actually causing severe disruptions to their long-term viability. This is quite the opposite of a helping hand. Unregulated emissions also lead to heat-related illnesses and respiratory conditions, increasing healthcare costs and reducing workforce availability, reliability, and productivity. Air pollution is inextricably linked to climate change. The burning of fossil fuels creates this vicious cycle that when the warming exacerbates the air pollution like soot, smog, NOx, and SOx. I've seen firsthand how this affects people I know, from severe asthma attacks to health complications. Many people in the Northeast that have never had an asthma attack in the past couple of years or have had two in the past week. My mom just passed away from Alzheimer's. I'm from Midland, Texas, the heart of the Permian Basin, where 50% of our oil comes from. The water's contaminated, cancer risks are high. This is real. The cost of inaction are too high and they're growing every day. I strongly urge you to maintain this important endangerment finding. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you listening.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, our next speaker is Sean Arthson.
Yep, I'm here. Video's not coming on. Thank you. I am Sean Arthson, Deputy Director of Dakota Resource Council in Bismarck, North Dakota. I'm here to strongly oppose EPA's proposal to rescind the 2009 greenhouse gas endangerment finding and to roll back greenhouse gas vehicle standards. This decision would strip away one of the most important tools we have to address climate change under the Clean Air Act. North Dakotans are already paying the price for unchecked climate pollution with hotter summers, more volatile weather that's hammering our crops, ranching operations, and rural infrastructure. In oil and coal country, we see how methane and other greenhouse gases don't just fuel climate change, they bring in toxic co-pollutants that cause asthma, heart problems, and other health issues in our communities. The endangerment finding isn't some political whim. It's built on decades of scientific evidence upheld by the courts and reinforced by the lived experiences of people like our members. Rolling it back would send a message to polluters that they can ignore the science and dodge responsibility for the harm that they cause. Vehicle emissions are one of the largest sources of greenhouse gases in the country. Weakening or eliminating these standards means more pollution, more health problems, and more costs shifted onto families, farmers, and local governments instead of onto the industries creating the problem. Our members believe in accountability. They believe in passing a livable state to their kids and grandkids, and the EPA has a legal and moral responsibility to protect public health and welfare and not to dismantle the very foundation that allows you to do it. On behalf of Dakota Resource Council and our members across North Dakota, I urge you to keep the endangerment finding in place, keep strong vehicle emission standards, and reject this dangerous rollback. The science is clear, the law is clear, and the stakes for our communities couldn't be higher. Thank you for letting me speak here today.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Kayla Benjamin.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Kayla Benjamin. Currently, I'm a fellow with the National Wildlife Federation, and before this, I was a local environmental journalist in the Washington, D.C. area. I strongly oppose the repeal of the 2009 endangerment finding. Scientists across governments and private corporations have known since before I was born that greenhouse gases were trapping heat in our atmosphere and endangering our world. Now we're in this desperate fight for the health and safety of our families and our communities. If the Environmental Protection Agency rejects its legal responsibility to protect the environment and to address climate pollution, it would be a signal that the very people Americans have entrusted to fight for our future are instead just laying down and giving up. Climate change is happening. It's making our world more unstable, more unhealthy, less beautiful, and less fair. In addition to the mountain of scientific evidence, I know this is true because I see it all around me. It's little things like dwindling numbers of fireflies in local parks, and it's big things like when the mid-Atlantic sky was filled with dangerous wildfire smoke for days at a time in 2023. That same summer, 10 dogs died in a flash flood at a canine daycare near my house. So climate change doesn't feel abstract to me anymore. I'm 26 years old, and I'm looking down the barrel of a future defined by grief for our dying natural world and an onslaught of extreme weather events that will get harder and harder to predict and adapt to. The science-backed endangerment finding created key opportunities for the EPA to stand up for Americans' right to live in a better world than that. It supported the job-creating push to expand affordable clean energy and efforts to make sure more Americans can breathe clean air. Rescinding this finding would put everyone's health and safety at risk so that polluters can continue to operate unchecked. And this rewinding of the clock will only leave the U.S. more unprepared for worsening weather and shifting economic winds. I ask that the EPA reject this proposal to undo the endangerment finding and instead step up to protect the health and safety of American communities. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Ashley McClure.
Hi, it isn't letting me start my video.
I'll give you a prompt.
Okay, thank you. So, my name is Ashley McClure. I'm grateful for this opportunity to testify in this process. So, I am a mother of two. I'm a primary care doctor in the San Francisco Bay Area of California. And I'm also the co-founder and executive director of the nonprofit Climate Health Now, which is a state affiliate of the Medical Society Consortium on Climate and Health. I'm here today as a physician committed to caring for the health of all patients and all people to oppose the EPA's proposed rollback of the endangerment finding. The endangerment finding, as many have said today, accurately concludes that climate change endangers public health and welfare for current and future generations. And this is why groups like the American Medical Association has joined over 200 other health organizations in declaring that climate change is a public health crisis that threatens the health and well-being of all individuals. And that was in the U.S. Call to Action on Climate, Health, and Equity, which is a policy platform. The EPA's proposed rollback is dangerous and harmful, and I urge you to oppose it. When I see like a patient, 25-year-old young woman in the Bay Area, when we're having our fall and winter wildfires that are worsened because of climate change, I can give her an albuterol inhaler and a prednisone prescription, and I feel like a terrible doctor because I know that the real root cause treatment is public health policy that protects people, that regulates climate pollution and stops global warming. When patients are repeatedly being evacuated on stretchers from the hospital in Santa Rosa because of climate change fueled wildfires, when my other people on this call are calling for market stability through deregulation, it falls on deaf ears because what's important are people and protecting people. So America's doctors and nurses and the entire health community, we brought our patients through our communities through the COVID pandemic. And what we're asking people to do now, the leaders in the EPA, is to stand up and protect us through this political moment by protecting the endangerment finding, to do right by people and those to come, and not, fold to the interests of corporate profits. So please protect the endangerment finding and protect us all.
Thank you for your comments. All right, we're going to move to our last speaker for panel 20. And after this speaker, we will take a brief break. Our next speaker is Karen Harrett.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for your time. My name is Karan Harith. I'm a mechanical engineer, and in all of my years of working with electrical vehicles and renewable energy, I can't in any good faith support EPA's rollback of greenhouse gas emissions and reconsideration of 2009 endangerment findings. While several speakers before me have focused in detail on the impact of such emissions, both directly and indirectly on the public health, I would like to go on record to focus on problematic amendments that not only make it legal for manufacturers to not care about emissions, but also give leeway to irresponsibly produce dangerous vehicles that can be a threat to the American public. My main focus would be the red line version of EPA's proposed regulations in section 85.2103 of emission warranty. There's a clear deliberate attempt to exclude batteries as a renewable energy storage systems from the emission warranty of 8 years or 80,000 miles. That I find very deeply disturbing. Another point would be the amendments to various mathematical equations for mass flow rate and to calculate molar carbon emissions from internal combustion engines. These calculations have not only been used in the US, but governments all around the world to regulate emissions from vehicles. I think this is a very disingenuous course of action by the EPA. This would not only be a historic bad faith finding and sort of argument for just the US, but other governments around the world can just replicate the same stuff for not just repealing greenhouse gas emissions from vehicles, but industrial facilities as well. As American President Abraham Lincoln once said, that you cannot forego the responsibilities of tomorrow by evading it today. I think that the panel today will consider not repealing the 2009 endangerment findings and make it worthwhile for the American public to have a healthy and greener future. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.